Joe Henson, Jacob Stafford, and Nathan Herzog, correct?
Very good. Yeah.
And we have your permission to interview.
Yes, you do.
Okay, excellent.
Great.
Great. All right, so we are going to discuss a important topic regarding the nature of existence, the existence of God, or the lack thereof, and we'll just kind of work through it.
Absolutely.
At some point, in our conversation, I do want to kind of lay out. Obviously, we're going to be speaking from foundations, and when we're doing that, then we kind of have permission to look at the foundation that we stand on. Okay, and so I'm going to offer my foundation. You offer yours.
Absolutely.
And we'll all feel free to, and you included. So, but I know where you stand. but we will kind of look and see the stonework, as it were.
Absolutely. But it's important to start.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, why don't we?
Well, you said you had something to lay out.
Well, yeah, I do, but I kind of want to. Do we want to continue on where we started with? Okay.
Sure. So I want to finish some of my story with you, so you have a better understanding of my context. I think context is also important with laying the foundation here.
Yeah.
So for me, I was a hockey player, like I was telling you, most of my life. Got to college, I lost hockey, so I had an existential crisis. I studied many religions, philosophers, psychologists. Ultimately, I ended up somewhere near Buddhism. That's what I practiced. Got into meditation. It was very impactful for me. But the deeper I went into the practice, the more I sensed some kind of cognitive dissonance. There was this tension in my life. Philosophers often refer to it as angst. Existential guys refer to it as angst. And I think God was using that in my life to continue to show me that not only is nothing satisfying, Ecclesiastes, but also that the more that I tried to wrestle with this in my own way, it was just utter failure. I didn't have the terms at the time to say this, but it was still sinful. I was sensing that. So
you're sensing it was sinful?
Yeah, well, I knew it was wrong, and I knew that the more that I tried, the different practices that I would put into place to try and mitigate my experience of pain and suffering. Because it was all about me still.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And even if I tried to do it for other people, it was still a manipulation of some sort to make it about me. Right?
Sure.
So at the very least, I began to sense that. And then when Easter came around that year, I just woke up and felt like I wanted to go to a church. It's a very strange kind of experience, but I just knew I wanted to go to a church. And suffice it to say, I found a church online. I went to that church, heard the gospel for the first time. And it finally clicked for me. It finally clicked. Out of everything I've ever studied, this was the only one that seemed to be unique. That is, that it was grace-based. It was something that was given, not earned, to be made right with ultimate reality or God or whatever the concept is. It was a gift. And so I remember the line that kind of triggered the connections for me. The preacher was on stage and he goes, Jesus was carrying a cross not that he had earned, but a cross that we had earned. And then from that point on, the dominoes started to fall. And so I've been following Christ ever since. And so, that to say, I had a wide range of experiences through philosophy and study, looking into psychology and other religions, and out of them all, I came to Christianity, Jesus Christ. So I hope that's helpful for some of my context.
No, that's good, because me personally, as I enjoyed the things that you look for. I mean, when I left Christianity, that's also what I did. I actually had do you want me to talk about my upbringing?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and hit.
Do we have to have any structure, or we just?
It's pretty flexible.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So for me, I like I said, I was a pretty big Christian, and then I had this kind of rebellious age, like in high school, where everything, like I put a middle finger to everything kind of attitude. Listen to Blink-182, which is, I don't know if you know what that is. Yeah, you're 29, you know what Blink-182 is. Thought I was the biggest rebel, and so as a rebel, I had to rebel against everything. one of those things being Christianity. So I never actually, the original departure from me from Christianity had nothing to do with logic, reason, or God not answering my prayers. It was just, I'm going to do this because it's different. And I became a Rastafarian.
Really?
So I should show you, I should bring you pictures, but
You had the hair too, didn't
I
you?
had dreadlocks,
Yeah, you did.
man. Oh, but I was serious. I would go out with my Bible into the forest every day and read. Every day. It's a big. I've never been so devoted to. It's probably the most I've been actually devoted to anything. So, a lot of my experience with religion or just belief itself, it would be through Rastafarianism. A lot with Christianity, but really the whole bang with Rastafarianism, because a lot of things that I present to Christians now, that I see people wrestle with, I wrestle with that as a Rasta instead. I would suggest both of the same problems, because I believe that there was a God. I believe that Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, he's an emperor who was crowned in 1930, November 10th, 1930, the emperor of Ethiopia. And Rastafarian, his name was Ras, space, Tafari, which means Prince Tafari. So the Rastafarianism is a belief that this man was God. It's the same kind of thing with Jesus. It's just the belief that this man is God too.
Yeah.
And I was very devoted to that. But along with it, of course, came the slew of everything. It's eating. It mattered what I ate. It mattered how I acted towards people. I mean, my whole life was very much centered around this thing, and it was beautiful. Honestly, I mean, it was a great way to operate my life. I mean, even now, I'll listen to a reggae song and I'll start getting teary-eyed just because it just went so deep. Like I, you know.
Kind of a nostalgic longing of a
Probably more
simpler
that.
time.
Certainly a nostalgic longing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. My church was every day in the car ride between work, you know, listening to Bob Marley and praising Selassie I, you know, screaming Rastafari and whipping my dreadlocks around. A cup of coffee. I laugh at it now because it's silly. But then for me,
Can't deny those good tunes, though.
some good tunes, and I still listen to them ever so often, although music has been not on the forefront as much anymore. But I went to college. Oh, so I saw a YouTube video one day of a man named Alan Watts.
I'm familiar.
And I'm sure you know who he is if you know anything about Eastern philosophy. He's the one who brought a lot of the Eastern ideas. So he, with his clarity of speaking, he was able to show a completely different way of looking at reality and a completely different approach to the hard problem of existence. And that slowly I broke away from being a Rasta. There was no like definite I'm done, but I think when I cut my dreadlocks, I was like kind of a definite like, okay, I guess I'm done with that. And I would say I became more of a Buddhist and kind of came into like believing like oh, you know, the universe, like what he would say is the universe is, you are an aperture which the universe looks out, you know, that kind of stuff. And I was very much enthralled with that kind of thinking. It was totally different. Like the line that changed it for me was, he said, most of us feel that we came into this universe. We came into existence, but you didn't. You came out of it. Like a rose from a rose bush. We emerge from the universe. We don't come into it. That's a Western idea. Because Western ideas is that it's contingent on the framework that the universe is ceramic. It's made by a master carpenter. It's no coincidence that Jesus was the son of a carpenter, and also the son of God. Or he, in the Bible, calls it the son of man. But so that was a big shift, just a big philosophical framework shift. But I would say I kind of went into it very full-heartedly, thinking, and it wasn't until I came into contact with philosophy and epistemology and how do we know what we know, and what is a good reason to believe in something, that I divorced myself from even that kind of thinking, Alan Watts thinking. And so now, but yeah, we'll get to that later. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of the story.
want to clarify a little bit more of your context.
Yeah.
Can you help us understand where you're at currently? So we've heard a lot about your history at
Sure.
different points in our conversation, but help give us some framework of where you're at right now in your belief system.
Belief system?
Or however you want to define yourself.
So I guess if we're going to talk about it in terms of Christianity, or like God, I don't think that there are any good reasons. So like my definition of atheist is that I don't think there are any good reasons to believe in God or anything supernatural.
Okay.
So that's just that's
Okay.
the definition.
Okay, now let me kind of see if you can expand that a little bit.
Yeah.
Would you say that you are primarily a materialist atheistic?
No, because, well, so it's a good question because there's this kind of divide in philosophy between idealism and materialism. I think that materialism is an uncertainty, right? So materialism is the model we use now. It's the one that works. It's the model that works. It doesn't mean that's what it is. In fact, we have never found material. Material is a philosophical concept, just like spiritual is a philosophical concept. They're both philosophical concepts.
Yeah.
And the universe isn't spiritual, it isn't material. It's giving it a name that would be my foundation. That would be, to speak foundationally, that would be my foundation. Neither concepts can actually be right because they're just descriptive. But and my epistemology begins, what I know begins with I am. Not even Descartes' I think, therefore I am. There's something that notices their thinking. So I am.
So there's 2 points there I want to clarify.
Sure.
So your foundational presupposition is self-existence.
Not a presupposition. You don't need logic. Because presupposition means it's a logical framework that you're basing. So I am doesn't require logic, doesn't require presupposition. It just requires your experience. It's just absolutely true. You can be a brain in the vat, you can be whatever, you just know that the lights are on. That is something you know. You don't need to presuppose it.
Well, that's how I intend to use the word, the way that you're describing it, is that you just assume it.
Well, it's not an assumption, it's an observation. So an assumption, like a presupposition, is that God exists. And then building a framework off of that ideal, or that the universe is material. It's also a presupposition. Well, the universe is actually spiritual. That's another presupposition. But this is actually difficult because it's the one thing that we can know for certain. There's only one certainty, and that is I am. I don't even know that you are.
But that's kind of a question begging.
Yeah.
Also,
Are you certain of that?
yes. So no. So if I'm not making the argument.
That's something else that you're certain of.
I'm not making the argument that I am. I'm observing that I am.
Yeah.
But that
So
doesn't
it doesn't require justification. It doesn't require logic. Doesn't require justification. It doesn't require anything. It literally doesn't require anything. That's what because Descartes had it almost right, because he went and doubted everything. So through self-doubt, it's actually a lot of what we do in meditation. Is going back and back. What can he actually know? What can I actually know? I gotta doubt this. What can I know? The only thing you can know is you can say consciousness and its contents. The lights are on. In other words, that is unmistakable. It's the one thing that is unmistakable. It doesn't require logic. It doesn't require reason. It doesn't require anything.
Well, but the thing is it's not a. You're saying the lights are on. All you can say is lights are on, but you don't know if they're your lights.
No, you're right. Lights are on.
You don't know if you're a figment of someone else's imagination.
Exactly.
I mean,
That's you're just making my point.
Yeah.
You're right. You don't know. You don't know anything. The lights are on. It's cumbersome language.
if your
as well.
position is true.
It's not a position.
Sure.
A position. So it's like, are you aware?
Yes,
How do you know?
because God has revealed it to me, and I'm in His
Are
world,
you-
His universe.
Okay, so that's a presupposition.
Sure.
But I'm saying from this moment, let's say you don't believe in anything. Let's say a baby. Does a baby know it's aware
Yes,
without knowing God?
that's impossible.
Okay, so that's what we call a presupposition.
Sure.
So that's a philosophical foundational presupposition that you're talking about. Well, I'm not trying to talk about that. I'm talking about just the immediacy of experience. That alone doesn't require explanation. We know that is. That's what Descartes means by I think therefore I am. I think he got it wrong.
Cognitive ergo sum.
Cogito ergo sum.
Yeah.
But I think he got it wrong though.
I've heard it pronounced differently, but
I know they say the cogito, and then some people say that he didn't mean ergo because it's not therefore because I'm thinking that I am existing.
Yeah.
He's saying that there's two things.
And actually, it isn't more doubting is going on. Isn't it more accurate to say that?
Yeah, I would say it would be radical doubt.
Yeah.
It's certainly radical doubt.
Yeah, it wasn't thinking; it was actually doubting is going on.
It's just a constant. I mean, I think because he even makes the claim that God exists in his own meditations. It's what was called the Cartesian circle.
Yeah.
Which is already dismissed in philosophy, but because it's a circular argument. But he continues after the Cartesian circle and says, well, really, what I can know is that the lights are on. And then, of course, the famous brain into that issue. It doesn't even matter. This could be the matrix. It could be a God. I mean, it could be God that's continuing on. It doesn't even matter. I do know, though, that the lights are on. And there's not even an I do know that you're right. Language is cumbersome.
I want to find a common term that we can share on that. So would you call that an axiom?
No. I would just say it is just a foundation. It is just not even a foundation. It's just the only thing that we can know for certain.
And you don't have a term to describe that?
If we can agree on axiom, that's fine.
That's what I'm
I don't
trying
like
to do.
axiom, though, because then we can say, oh, so is believing in God's an axiom.
Well, that's
Because it's
exactly
not
where
the
I'm
same
going
thing.
with this.
Yeah.
Because you're assuming this one thing. It seems like it's very important to you to connect that with the immediacy of experience. And so it begs the question, so are you going to make the argument that because you have that foundational understanding that you can reason out your comprehension of what's around you on a moment-by-moment basis?
No, that's not saying. So I'm not making an argument.
Then what are you saying?
That's why it's not an axiom and it's not a presupposition. It's just, my point is that where my epistemology stands begins with the immediacy of experience, that there is something going on rather than nothing.
Okay, but then if you're not going to rest something on it, what do you do with it?
You don't need to. I don't know. It could be rested on 1,000 turtles.
then
it could be rested on an evil genie. It could be rested on anything. It doesn't matter.
But
That's the point.
we have to. You have to escape our heads somehow. How are you connecting to?
My only point is that this is where it begins for me.
Yeah.
So you wanted to lay the foundations.
Yeah.
Escaping the point's the aftermath. But I think what is funny is that I'm just trying to point out and ask the experience itself. That's the beginning. Because in this experience, it's a totally don't know experience. The only thing that is known is that there's experience.
Well, at least
it's a
you're
don't know.
consistent. Yeah.
So there's not. I don't know that I am. I don't know that you are. I don't know that God is. I don't know that God isn't. I don't know that anything is. In fact, don't know is the foundation.
Okay.
But the one thing that I can know, the one thing that doesn't require logic, doesn't require reason, doesn't require presuppositionalism, is I am, and not even I. Just the lights. That's why I say the lights are on. It's just a kind of a colloquial, easy way to say that there's something happening rather than nothing, and I don't know if it's actually happening, but it's not like what's happening before we were born, from the point of view of our experience. From the point of view of our experience, where were you before you were born?
Before I was born, I was in my mother's womb.
Well, yeah, but that's thinking, so that's an idea. My point is, from the point of view of
Before I was
experience, if you go
conceived?
back and back, huh?
Before conception?
Yeah,
I
before
didn't-
conception.
I don't believe I existed.
Okay, so then what was that experience?
It was non-existence.
Exactly. So we know that that's not happening now. We know that there is experience. That's what we can know. That's the immediate. That's the foundation. And to make it easy, like when I speak in philosophical circles, it is I think therefore I am. The cogito sum or cogito ergo sum is the foundation. So the only reason I put that out, that's not an argument for God or existence of God or anything. It's just it's the beginning of my epistemology, because everything after is uncertain. And what we have to do from that point is determine, and I think that kind of like Hume's point, but I think is also the scientific point of view, is that there is no certainty at all. In fact, everything that we know are different varying degrees of probability. And so,
So solipsistic?
no, solipsism is the idea that you're the only one that exists. That's
Say it again.
solipsism is the idea that you are the only experience that exists. You are the only thing that exists.
But that is the logical extreme that you admitted to earlier, that it's possible for that to be your case.
But it's also possible that that's not the case. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The point is, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm not making a solipsism claim. I'm making the claim that there's existence rather than non-existence, that there's experience rather than non-experience. I
Well,
am.
So quickly to
Right,
summarize,
so
well-
I'm not going to make it's a jump to say I am is the only I am. I am is
Yeah,
the,
sure.
that's
Okay.
that's solipsism, which is a bad. I think it's
Now,
a terrible.
when you say existence, you mean you don't mean everything outside of our selves.
I do.
Okay, okay, that's the thing. You're making a jump now. How do you get from lights are on
Yeah.
to here we are?
It's a jump. Yeah. It's so.
oh, it's good you say that.
So yeah, no, exactly. That this is. I'll just say it again. The only thing I can know is I am. Existence, non-existence, material, spiritual, God, no God, fairies, pixies, whatever. I have no idea. Which isn't actually true. This is just the foundation. So then I
Isn't
can make.
actually true?
So I can make this next point. I don't. I don't know. Foundational. I don't know.
Okay.
So there's nothing that can be known except this one thing, if you want to call it a thing. So the
Except that you also know you're certain of it.
do I know that I'm certain of it? I have the experience of certainty, but I'm not sure that's even true.
Okay.
But the one thing I know is true is I could be certain or uncertain about it. It doesn't matter. There's something happening. The lights are on.
Somebody's lights are on.
Huh?
Somebody's lights are on.
We don't know. We don't know if it's a somebody.
Lights are on. Not
Exactly.
But you can't see your
But
lights.
you
are
see, it's actually so foundational that language can't touch it. It's so foundational because I have to say, I think, therefore I am. Who is this I? What are you even
Yeah,
talking about?
you're assuming identity at that point.
Exactly. It's not even that. It's really just. That's why the question I think was a little bit more useful. Before you were born, before you even conceived, before you even thought of, let's say 1,000 years ago, where were you? From the point of view of your experience. You know, it's not a blankness, it's not a blackness. Another kind of fun way to do it is like, what does the back of your head look like from the point of view of your eyes? Like, it's not blank, it's not black, it's not even nothing. You see, does that help you? Sometimes that's kind of an interesting thought, but yeah. So that's the beginning of the epistemology. Is that that's the one certainty. Everything else that follows are varying levels of probability.
Well,
In terms of knowledge, so like justified true belief, we could talk about the justified part and all that, but that's the foundation. So whenever you say, like I hear Christians say, "Oh, you have to think that you know everything to say that there's no God," and that's actually not my claim that there is no God. That's not my claim. So if we were to kind of tie this together, I do not claim that there is no God. That's just as a ridiculous statement to say, or I would say just as an illogical statement to say, as there is a God. Unless you can present evidence or show me a good argument for the existence of God.
Okay.
That's kind of where we're at.
so I want to summarize and clarify one point.
Sure.
You resisted calling it an axiom or presupposition, but this
did.
foundational understanding of I am, that's where you work from. Is that correct?
It's not I am as a philosophical concept.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the right
So
language.
that's why I'm
describe
trying to
that.
get rid of we can just call it the cogito. It's just, it's actually not even that more. We can even forget it really if we want to continue to have a more meaningful conversation, because I think we're getting hung up and trying to put this I am into a box, which it can't be because it's before
it's not
thinking.
it's not
This is the point I'm trying to make.
I'm just trying to rest your case on that. But I can't.
Well, I'll show you
I'm
how
going
to
right
do
through
that. No, I'll show you.
Okay.
I'll show you in a second.
So what I was trying to get at was, however you want to label that,
Yeah.
you were at least consistent in saying that leads you to a position where you don't know.
Don't know
There's no
anything.
certainty.
Yeah.
That's the connection that I wanted to make very clear.
Socrates, yeah.
Right. Okay, so at least we have that shared understanding of where you're at in your
Okay.
worldview or how you
Yeah.
understand reality.
Okay, yeah. And if you want to use axioms just for purposes of communication,
Yeah.
let's do that. That makes it easier.
Sure.
I just don't want that to be confused with an axiom of God, because it's not the same.
Yeah.
So that's a totally different thing. Because you could say, well, your axiom may be you are, but then my axiom is gone. That would lead to confusion because then we're using axiom in two different ways. And so that's why I want to retain this kind of special pleading, I would say, to we can just call it the cogito. We can say that, the cogito, which is Descartes' cogito. So the reason that's important is because I don't make any claims to the positive. I'm not going to say this is absolutely true. I'm not going to say that this is, I don't think there are any certainties, and there are no, even in science, there are no certainties. And my knowledge is an ever-evolving situation that I'm willing to change at any moment based on good argumentation and evidence, and that is resting on the idea.
But in order to analyze that, you have to have a starting point.
Yeah, and the starting point is, I think therefore I am.
Well, now you're assuming identity again. You have to argue for that.
Okay, so remember what I just said. So when I say I think therefore I am, don't get stuck up on the language. I'm not trying to talk about the language. You're right. I think therefore I am. Who is this I?
Yeah.
What is thinking? What is, you're assuming these things. I'm not assuming that.
Yep.
The same thing with back to non-existence to existence. Yeah. So, so everything. So let me continue this epistemology for a second, just to make it a little bit clearer, because I think you guys are going to try to. I don't know if you guys are presuptionalists.
I am.
Okay. So which I good. So that's why let me counter this for a second.
Sure.
Before we continue it. So that being the only thing that we can, from my point of view, that being the only thing that we can know, or I can know, everything else is don't know. And the foundation is, well, I know that there's a difference between what I think in my mind and what happens in reality. So I can imagine a unicorn, but I don't see a unicorn. I can think of a unicorn, but it's not there. So there must be a difference between my mind and something outside of me. Furthermore, everybody makes a claim about reality. So you make a claim, he makes a claim, Hindus make a claim, Buddhists make a claim, whatever. Not entirely correct, but so we all have differing opinions about reality. So there has to be a method in order to differentiate the imaginary from the reality, or based on levels of probability. So we can only really so what is more probable to be true? So for instance, let's say I tell you there's a green monster behind that stage. Okay. Or I can say there's a red car behind the stage. One of those are more probably true, because there's implicit evidence in the red car, there's no implicit evidence in the green monster. So it's all about varying degrees of probability, and that's kind of my stance with God. And I think that assuming or having the believing that there's a God is a well, we'll get to it when we get to it.
Okay.
But so that's where it stands, and that's where all of science stands, that's where logic stands, and that's where most philosophers stand.
Sure, it's pragmatism. But you're assuming that the standard is our own. It's human in design, and that we're the authority, the standard to which those probabilities are measured.
The standard, you talk about like logic?
No. So the way that you just reasoned through that, you're assuming that we're the ones that determine what is probable. We're the ones that determine how to measure probability. We're the ones that determine and even interpret the different forms of evidence or observations that we make.
Sure.
I just find that to be an interesting observation.
Yeah. It's
Man is the measure of all things.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that being, because probability and naming everything, like I said, everything is just a name. These are descriptive, right? They're not in themselves ultimate. They're not ontologies. So so I would say that. And I don't like the word authority. It's kind of it's a very Christian thing to say. Because you're going to go back to say, if you're a precept, you're going to try to say that we need some sort of absolute foundation for the laws of logic and logic.
Well, I can go to that, but more immediately I was thinking if the creator of the standard, however you term that, is people.
Yeah.
But you just said earlier that people can't have certainty about anything.
Yes.
Isn't that creating a problem in that evaluation process?
No, because it's differing levels. Like I said, there is uncertainty. So there is no foundation like that. There's just varying levels of probability. So what you want to say is that there is a certainty, that there is a foundation. And I'm saying that it could be or it could not be. It doesn't matter. We don't know. In fact, it's impossible to know.
Well, I haven't said that yet. That's not where I was going, but fair enough.
if you didn't, I got that implicitly through where you're going, and I apologize if I'm incorrect about that. But yeah, I'm saying that there is no certainty. So even like say like you sitting across from me, based on probability, really, I believe that's probably true. It's reasonable for me to believe that you exist, and that you're speaking. Your name is actually Jacob, and you did actually play hockey, right? There's a lot of reason for me to believe that, right? It's very unreasonable for me to believe that there, behind me, behind the doors over there, is a pink skeleton who is magical, who grants wishes. So you can see I'm making that big contrast on purpose, because I don't know either one of those, fundamentally. I don't know that you are actually real. I don't know if the pink skeleton's real. But there are differences between probability of those two being real. It is far more probable that you are real and not the pink skeleton.
Yeah.
Based on implicit, and this is where we go into, we can talk about evidence. And that's the front end of it, the piece. So no certainty.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And yet, I would assume you don't live your life with that in that way.
I do.
That level of
Oh, what do you
uncertainty.
mean?
I mean, well, if danger is approaching you, or you're in a moral situation, you certainly don't think along the lines of theoretical certainty or uncertainty when you're in those situations, right? Like if,
What do you mean? Like
Cars
turning on
there.
your car?
or a car bearing down on you, so that you're step in front of a car on a walkway or something, right?
Sure, it's an attitude of faith.
Yeah, but that presents a problem for the way that you just talked about interpreting reality or observing reality, whatever you'd like to say, and then how you actually practice it. There seems,
What do you mean?
in my
What do you mean by
observation,
practice it?
well, the way that you live, it sounds like the way that you live. Actually, I should
So
put
that's
that
a totally different subject, right?
I think they're certainly related.
Of course they're related, but that's a totally different subject. So, like, if we're talking about epistemology, we got to talk about epistemology. If you want to talk about like how to live a good life, it's a totally different thing, right? Now, if you like, I don't think that being happy is contingent on understanding that you can't know anything and then that everything's based on probabilities. It's not my happiness and my well-being isn't based on my epistemology.
Sure.
Other than maybe the cogito sum. But the contradiction that I would say that there's no contradiction because of the two subject areas. It's literally not a, so like, it's just, I'm happy to talk about that.
Sure.
About how to live a good life, and I think it's extremely important, and it is related, but going back into just epistemology, what can I know?
So
That's
then
what I'm talking about.
we would just have to agree to disagree on that connection there, because I would argue fundamentally they're connected. The way, if there's going to be coherence in your system or your worldview or whatever you want to call it, those two should reinforce one another.
Just because they're connected doesn't mean that they're the same.
Well, certainly.
So just like I can talk
Nor
about...
did I argue that.
Well, you're saying that you're making... You just said that they're connected, which I agree, but it doesn't mean that you can make an argument about the way I live life as an argument against my epistemology. That doesn't make sense.
Really?
You can't, it's literally just not even the same ballpark. It's like talking about...
Is it not one of the evidences that would exhibit whether somebody's in step with their beliefs?
Not at all, because you can have very... Not
Really?
at all. No, because it's not a... Yeah, because you can have somebody who's extremely depressed and agree with everything I'm saying. You can have somebody who is extremely happy and agree with everything I'm saying. How they live their life is totally separate from this epistemology. Now, I think from a Christian perspective, there's a lot more to Christianity than just epistemology. Right? It's a lifestyle. It's literally a conviction. It's a total reformation of one's life, and that's why it's different. The issue I think that I can assume that we're having here is that you're starting from a top-down methodology. You're starting from I would say, you're starting from a knowledge and then explaining it downward. And so that's why that's why those totally, because God is real, or whatever, we haven't gotten to it yet. I'm speaking for you.
No,
I'm not trying
that's
to put
correct.
words in your mouth, but I'm putting
correct.
words in your mouth. And but from top-down attitude. And I'm trying to start from no knowing and build knowledge up.
Can you really claim that, though? Because your top-down is that you exist.
No, that again, it's not a logical. I gotta repeat this. I gotta make it really, really strong. I exist is not philosophy. Not philosophy. It's just like you exist. Whether there's God, if there's no God, there's nothing, there's something happening. And whatever that is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's I, no I.
Well, I certainly understand your claim. I just don't
but
agree with it.
see, but the thing is
It's the one unmistakable thing. It's the one thing that it's the one thing that can be seen to be actually true. There's no way to, because it's not philosophy.
I hear what
we
you're
went
saying.
back
I just
to
don't
it.
agree with it.
Why?
Well, the burden of proof isn't on me to prove how it can't be an integral
I'm not
part
asking you
of
to prove it.
philosophy.
No, I'm asking why you disagree. Why do you disagree with I am?
I didn't say that. I said I disagree with your claim that I am isn't a necessary part of a philosophical system.
That's not my claim. I'm saying that I am isn't philosophy. It can still be a foundation for a philosophical framework. I would say it's a foundation for my epistemology. But itself, the observation, kind of like it's in science. So like, let's say in science, before we knew about Neptune, actually it was it Uranus or Neptune? One of those. Yeah, it was Uranus. So Galileo observed Uranus. We can say Uranus, it sounds a little funny saying Uranus, but Uranus. He observed it, thought it was a star. Right? He didn't know what he was observing.
Sure.
So, but the observation, obviously that existed. Like that thing was real before we knew what it was. But then we can, because of other information, we were able to figure out what that was later. The point of the immediacy of experience is that isn't even an argument. It's just an observation, right? And it's the one, I would say, undeniable observation. That there's something rather than nothing.
To be transparent with you for a moment, part of the reason that I keep fixating on this, coming back to it, I'm happy to move on, but I have a lingering curiosity. Perhaps the whole bent, the whole gravity of the way that you live life is going to be attracted toward that, whatever your foundational understanding is. So if your foundational understanding is self, then I'm wondering if the rest of your interpretation of reality is going to be gravitating to that. It's going to be drawn to that. Whereas in mine, my foundational one is God, and so everything that we're going to talk about is gravitated toward Him. So just to be transparent with you, that's part of what I'm thinking.
And that's what I was saying about the top down versus the bottom up. Because you're right. When you that's what I would call a presupposition. That would be a philosophical axiom or a philosophical presupposition. Is God. But the I think therefore I am isn't. It isn't. And I'm not. And it's not special pleading. It's just because.
But is it a starting point?
It's a starting point for my epistemology. For
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But it's not like. But then to try to tie into like how to live a good life, I think I agree that they're all related in the sense that you do live in terms of how you philosophically see the world, or basically world. Like, who was it? That
Or you
said,
live inconsistently with it.
Or you
People
live
do
in
that.
absolutely, and that's very obvious when you do.
Yeah.
So, like for who was it that said that the mind is a wonderful place. It can make a hell out of heaven or a heaven out of hell. So your basic philosophical assumptions or how you view the world literally change what you experience. So that's why I could see why these are connected and why they're important. However, when we're talking about epistemology, it needs to be within epistemology. Not because it doesn't. It's like because in philosophy there's different modes of knowledge, right? There's ontology, and then I'm blanking. What's the big other one where epistemology lies?
I'm not tracking it where you want to go.
It doesn't matter. Let's leave it. Let's leave it there. We can move on though.
So epistemology, ontology.
No. So it doesn't matter. So ontology is about the ultimacy of things, and the other one is just it is epistemology and ontology. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot on epistemology. If you all would like to, I want to pivot a little bit, get into another topic.
Do you mind if I use the restroom first?
That's a good
Is that
idea.
gonna be, do you want to pause it?
Yeah.
It's a good
We're
idea.
gonna pause.
Because I know I'll be in the middle of something good, and I'll be like,
Okay. All right. So we talk about your position on things, and
Yes.
you know, it's kind of one of those things that we could probably just keep walking back and forth across and never really exhaust the discussion of.
Sure.
So so I'm not trying to say that we haven't responded to you, but or
No.
yeah, I think we
it's,
haven't.
it's like frying a fish. You know, or it's like cooking. You know, there's a time when you can overdo it. And
Yeah.
certainly, we need to move on when it's
Okay.
when
Okay. So now I want to present kind of my foundation.
Sure, absolutely.
Which
Yeah, that's great.
I'm fairly confident he's going to be
Christian, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fairly confident that Jacob is going to be with me on this. First of all, I am just an evangelical Christian. If you want to put a direct label on it, you call me a Baptist. I believe you're a Baptist.
Sort of.
Ish, mostly.
He's a philosopher. That's why he says sort of.
Yeah, but definitely capital C Christian
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Evangelical.
Are you? Do you mind me asking? Are you a literalist? Meaning, like, you believe that every word in the Bible is literally true?
In the sense of its genre, yes.
So, so do you think there are contradictions in the Bible? I was trying to get a framework.
No.
So no contradictions in the Bible.
No.
So it's the perfect
In
word.
the original autographs that's handed down to us, no. Are there interpretive questions? Are there translational questions?
Sure. No.
We can have that discussion, but generally speaking, the Word of God does not contradict Himself. God does not contradict Himself.
So there's no contradiction in the Bible.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
That's funny.
And as a Christian, this is what I seek to have a kind of a standard view on things. This is where I try to kind of keep these things in mind. I find where it was.
Are you reading Paul?
I am reading Paul. Yeah. You want to guess where?
Well, by the end of the book.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to make it bad. I don't want. The order is not good. Not Galatians, is it? Colossians?
No.
Okay.
No. 2 Corinthians, actually.
Corinthians.
Yeah. And actually, I'm going to start here, but we're going to end up in Romans. So
Okay.
To let you know where we're going. But I'm not.
No.
All my cards on the table. I'm not hiding anything. Not pulling any punches.
Me neither.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So,
That's great.
So here we go.
Yeah.
For although we live in the flesh, we do not wage war according to the flesh, since the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but powerful through God for the demolishing of strongholds. We demolish arguments and every proud thing raised up against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to obey Christ.
Yep.
And we are ready to punish any disobedience once your obedience is complete. So really the key thing there is that we seek to hold every thought captive to Christ. That everyone who would contend against the God of all the universe, they have to acknowledge that they're contending in His universe. And so whenever, as a Christian, whenever that challenge comes against the faith, I seek to keep that thought captive to Christ. And that's not some ability in myself innately. That's something that a Christian is given by faith, by His Spirit working in us. And so seeking to hold every thought captive to Christ. And so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but at some point you ceased to hold thoughts captive to Christ. Would that be fair?
Like I stopped believing in God.
Well, however you want to call it, you grew up in a Christian background. You were faithful in it, and then you started questioning everything. And you had your rebellious stage.
I was a little rebel. I got out of it to be a rebel, but yeah.
Yeah. And so at some point, you even rebelled against what you believed.
It's hard. Yeah, I would say that.
Okay.
But it's hard to say that because it wasn't like so much of a choice of belief. It was more of just an upbringing. Like this, it was taught to me as if it was the truth. So it's difficult to kind of like if you didn't grow up Christian, or did you not really. Not really. So like then he changed that view to and became a Christian. So he didn't really have a choice in the whatever he believed beforehand.
Yeah.
Right. You would say. You know what I'm trying to say?
Well, see, I would
as an infant.
I would go so far as even the choice to become a Christian is not our own. That's not
okay.
that's.
I would actually agree with you.
Well, because
Probably Probably for different reasons.
Well,
different reasons.
theologically speaking,
where I'm going with
I'll
that.
put another card on the table just in case it wasn't clear enough. I'm a Calvinist. I believe that that it is salvation is what you would call a monergistic activity. It's a monergistic action. It is. I am dead in sin, and what the Bible defines dead in sin as being is that I have no ability in myself to choose God. I can't change my mind on my own.
Okay.
Because my mind is set against God, because I am in sin.
Okay.
And so I believe that God, He reaches down to me with His Spirit, the Holy Spirit, to change my heart so that I am then enabled to change my mind, to choose Him.
Okay.
Yeah, that's and
Interesting.
All that is
interesting.
consistent with Scripture. We can identify those specific scriptures that I'm referencing.
Do you believe that? Please correct me if I'm wrong. I know there's a particular number that Calvinists believe will actually get saved. It's like
No.
207. No, it's not like it's not limited.
Are you
God
speaking of like the 144,000?
Yeah,
that's
so
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
right.
now I will say
I always mix those up.
I will say, is there a finite number of the elect? I don't know what that is,
so
but
there's
it's
an elect.
Yeah, there is an elect.
Yeah.
So there has to be a finite number because then there wouldn't be an elect.
But the number that God describes to Abraham is your descendants will be like the stars of the sky, like the sand of the seashore. So whatever number it is, it's no small number.
Yeah, it's multitudes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it could potentially include everyone on the earth.
It could include everyone on the earth at a point yet future.
Does God reach down His grace to everyone equally?
No.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's
No.
different from the Christianity I was growing up with.
Okay.
That's the case for at least Protestants, non-denominational, which Baptists are Protestants, but
Yeah.
but that particular view, Calvinism, would be the divorce from my upbringing. That God equally God equally reaches His grace to all people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's either if you have ears to hear it or you don't.
Now, I don't want to assume what you do or don't know. Are you aware of the divide between Arminianism and Calvinism?
No.
Okay, so that's helpful context as you get into
Yeah,
this.
certainly Calvinism and all that. That's a certain. It's an area I wouldn't be able to speak confidently about.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay.
Yeah. So if
It might change my mind if you got a good argument.
well,
Pray to God. It does.
Yeah, right. Let's hear it.
I can't. I'll just lay it out there. I can't change your mind.
I'm open to it, though.
Yeah, I
Just
hope
so
you are.
know
I'm
that
glad
I am
you are.
willing to change my mind.
Yeah. Well, if God grants it to you, I pray that He would. Okay. So yeah, the foundation as a Christian, I seek to hold every thought captive to Christ, and so every competing challenge against my faith, I don't give that authority over Christ. I submit it to Christ's authority, and I
Every challenge to faith, you
Yeah.
submit it to Christ's authority.
yeah.
So what do you mean by that?
Well, because every challenge that's come against the Christian faith, better thinking men than I have reasoned a solution over it.
Yeah.
And the Christian faith is only stronger for it.
Okay.
Yeah, because people have been trying to take down Christianity for the last 2,000 years, and it's all stronger than ever.
Well, the numbers, unfortunately, are declining.
In the West,
Well,
Yeah, you're right. It is different in the East, isn't it?
and in South America.
And like in Indonesia and South America.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. But yeah, you'll know very clearly when we start talking about things I don't know about.
Okay,
I'm not going to try to
fair enough. Okay,
think I know things I
so
don't know.
my
glad
foundation,
for that.
the foundation of the Christian faith
Yeah.
is the Word of God. We
Okay.
base
The
everything
Bible.
off of what He has revealed to us. Okay. I think that's something harkening back. Yeah, I remember that. Right? You would say.
Well, no, and I'm assuming most Christians have that foundation. Of course, the argument against that is why do you believe the Bible's true and all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's-
and we can get to that.
We can get to that, which
Yeah,
is
if-
a little
yeah,
bit more on
yeah.
the epistemology
Yeah,
side.
if you want to let me extend the foundation, then you can say, okay, look at this stone. Tell me about that. Yeah, we'll get
My
there.
apologies.
I'm happy to meet you there.
Let's do it.
So this is the Word of God. It has specific words for His people, but it also makes general statements about all people. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so one word of clarity. So there's God's people and then everybody else.
Yes. Yeah. Because God's book is written to God's people,
Yeah.
but it also makes statements about everyone.
Sure.
So the reason I'm having trouble with this is because the way I grew up is that everyone's a child of God.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So you guys don't believe everyone's a child of God?
Well,
Correct.
everyone.
Very interesting.
Okay.
I didn't know
Well,
that.
I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to end up on
It's
the
a
same.
little bit
same
more on
place.
the
Okay.
Jewish side, isn't it?
Well, no, everyone is an image bearer of God.
yeah, I mean, everybody's in,
Yeah, we're an image bearer of God, and we are supposed to represent and reflect God back to creation perfectly by the way that we live and the way that we conduct ourselves. And I guess we're pretty much on the same page there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is not everyone is a child of God in terms of salvation.
So not everybody will be saved, and it's up to God to decide that.
And God actually did determine that before the foundation of the world.
Got it. So He created people who He knew would go to hell anyway. So nobody.
Yes,
So if you,
but now we're getting into ultimate and prime. Was it,
Ontology. Well, I'm not trying to make an argument. I'm actually not
Yeah.
even trying to make an argument. I'm
Yeah.
trying to clarify your
Sure,
position.
sure.
Because I didn't know people actually believed this still. I thought it was. I thought that was a very niche group because really, I guess it's just based on my upbringing. That's all. And usually when I talk to Christians, they don't have.
let me lay another card down.
this
Then you.
view.
Okay, so basic Christian.
Yeah.
I believe the Word of God.
Yeah.
You can call me a Baptist. I'm gonna lay another card down.
Calvinist.
You can call me a Reformed Baptist.
A Reformed Baptist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which we would take our lineage as our foundings would be around the Reformation, when Luther broke away, when he was seeking to reform the Catholic Church, but the Catholic Church rejected him. So then Luther was forced to break away. The Protestant movement developed there, and the Reformed Baptists have a lineage in the line of the Reformers.
Because Calvinism came pretty much right after that, didn't it?
John Calvin, he was
Split
on the
different-
scene with Luther. Their ministries
That's
overlapped.
right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I want to add a few more points for clarity.
Sure.
Calvinism, the doctrines of grace, as they're called. I would
Okay.
love to get into that with you.
Yeah.
They did not originate from Calvin. That's
Yeah.
often missaid.
Yeah.
Okay.
That actually goes way back to Augustine. Way back.
Back to
so,
the 4th century.
yeah, those doctrines have been been around for a long time.
So is
Yeah.
Calvin? So this is more now just piquing my interest. Is Calvin? He utilizes Augustine for
Yeah.
his.
Oh, yeah.
So
Calvin would
so
call
his
himself an
confessions-
Augustinian. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, because reading Augustine, that's much more like Augustine.
Yeah.
What you were saying about.
So
I annotated. I rewrote the Confessions of St. Augustine.
Yeah.
Well, at least half of it, and then my computer
Yeah.
blew up. But yeah, very, very interesting. Now that makes way more sense.
Yeah.
But
You
that's
know-
not a Christianity that I run into regularly.
Yeah.
You know,
That's certainly
now-
niche,
Yeah.
I would say.
To add more clarity, there is a wrong view of election and the doctrines of grace that is overdone to an extreme called hyper-Calvinism. We
Okay.
do not hold that position.
Is that the whole 144,000
No.
people? Oh,
No.
okay.
No, there are a lot of extreme beliefs in hyper-Calvinism. One of them being, because God has determined the elect, and we don't know who the elect are, it's almost unimportant to go out and do evangelism. Because if God's going to save people, He's going to save people. He doesn't have to
Interesting.
do this.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So we do not hold that position.
Okay,
And
so-
for your understanding, there is such a wrong view. There is an extreme to this that is
Yeah.
wrong.
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Which is-
because that would be my next logical
Yeah.
question. Would be like, well,
Yeah.
then why say anything at all? If
Well,
everything's already
because
determined in the beginning.
we believe God is sovereign. That means
Yeah.
He is in control of His creation at all points of it. So not only does He determine the end, that this person will be saved,
Yeah.
He determines the means. You're going to go and witness to Him.
Yeah. That's what I was. So it's
Yeah.
determinism.
Yeah.
Which you and I are in agreement
Yeah.
for
Well,
different reasons.
it depends on the lens that we're looking through
Exactly.
to get there. Yeah.
But we can both come
Okay.
to that. I mean, that's interesting because you can
Yeah.
you can actually have a pretty solid,
Yeah.
non-biblical based argument for that position.
Yeah.
You know, like the illusion of but then how do you reconcile free will if you don't mind?
Okay.
Okay, is
Yes.
this too
Great.
much?
No. let me.
I'm sorry,
I'll
I'm
give you the
cutting
short
it up
answer.
and I'm
no,
not
no,
trying
this
to
is
do
great.
that.
No,
Okay.
I'm happy to. Let me give you the short answer.
Yeah.
And maybe there'll be some point of clarification between us. But my understanding of free will is this: it's that all will is limited by nature.
Yes.
And so I can freely decide to flap my arms all I want and fly to the moon.
Okay.
Am I physically able? My nature limits me. My nature limits me. And spiritually speaking, I have free will spiritually to do a certain number of things, but by my nature, before I was a Christian, before I was regenerated, born again, my nature did not permit me to actually choose God of my own autonomy.
Okay, so of course I'm just going to throw the easy questions at you against that position, like the free will thing. So like let's just say right now, you're saying that let me just repeat what you said to see if I'm if I'm following you correctly.
Yeah.
There is free will, but that free will is limited.
By nature.
By nature it's limited.
Yeah.
So if everything is determined, but there's the free will part, then there's an aspect of that determination where there's some wiggle room, where basically you can choose to do some things, but it's limited by the determinate God.
Well, yeah, because whatever we choose, God is not surprised by any of it.
So whatever we choose, God's not what?
God is not surprised by any of it.
So He knows it, but He didn't cause you to choose it.
Well, see, now we're getting into primary and secondary causes.
Yes.
That God, by His sovereign will, He holds back His sovereign hand to allow someone to be given to their nature, or He restrains it to a certain degree. Yes.
Let me add an example to make it a little clearer.
Yeah.
So, in my case, before I became a Christian, I did not have the ability to love God truly.
Okay.
So my free will was limited by that ability.
So, but see, that's my
within
point.
that range.
Okay, finish the whole thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and when God saved me, when He put in me the regenerative work of the Spirit, I was then able to choose to love God.
Oh, but you could have not chosen that.
Correct. In a certain sense,
But He would have already. So that you see the philosophical contradiction, right? Because then He would have known that.
Let me be a little clearer, because I do believe that we are inevitably drawn to Christ. He does cause that in us. But what I meant when I said that I could have chosen not to love God is there's still an authentic responsibility that I have to participate in coming to Christ, to, in our words, repent and believe, to continue a lifestyle of turning away from sin and coming toward God,
which is not
the direction of God.
Okay, so again, so it's God was the one who turned you towards Him. It's His doing, and He knew that would happen. He chose that to happen. Or like, let's say, for example, for me, He didn't choose it for me. He chose it for you. Or yet. Okay, yeah. So maybe this is the moment. You're watching it right now. So, but you see how the introduction of, well, now that I am turned towards God, then there's this extra free will bit that I then choose God. Again, though, that introduction of a free will kind of destroys determinism. Like, it destroys the fact that, so like, how can you have a free acting agent that's completely determined? It's just a logical contradiction.
A free acting agent that's completely determined.
So it can't necessarily. So it's not actually. So the limitation
you must
of
be
freedom.
going for total autonomy when you say free will.
I guess so.
Yeah. So that's a difference. That's a difference.
But that's what I mean. But that's what most people, I would assume, from my experience, mean by determinism is that you don't get kind of like B.F. Skinner, that you don't get a choice. Like actually even choosing something is the fact that I chose something is really an illusion. We can hook you up to an fMRI and see that the decision you make before you think you've made the decision, and it's not even a you that has made the decision. It's just a continual process. So there is no free will in that model. But you want to have both worlds.
Well, because we are accountable to God for our personal actions.
Which is a free will, right? So your personal actions, what you do, what you choose.
Yeah.
I am a free will. I am an acting agent.
Yeah.
You have.
See, and we have an example of this in Scripture, how this interaction takes place in mankind.
Okay.
In the book of Genesis, you've got what was it? Jacob, who was the son of Isaac, right? Yeah. Isaac had his son. He had two sons. He had Jacob and Esau,
Ishmael, right?
Ishmael is Isaac's brother, his half brother
I
from Hagar. But so you've got Jacob, and Jacob had his 12 sons, and one of his sons was Joseph. Okay, his brothers they committed evil against Joseph. They sold him into slavery, and at the end of their father's life, after there's a great reunion and a reconciliation, and the family was preserved, and we're decades down the line at this point, and Joseph is now the second in command over the entire kingdom of Egypt, and his brothers they just knew that he was just waiting for Dad to die, and then he's going to take his vengeance out on us. And what does because they were responsible for what they knew it, they were culpable for the crime they committed against Joseph, and he would have actually been within his rights before God to execute them, because if we look further in the scriptures, we see where man stealing is a crime punishable by death. That's what they deserved. That's what they deserved. And what does Joseph say to them? That with their intention, that they're responsible for, the guilt for the crime they committed against him. What does Joseph say? He says, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." And so we see that there's this. They're responsible for the actions they committed, and yet God was at work in the overarching sense, bringing to pass His intended purpose.
Did they have a choice in the matter?
Well, apparently they did, because they were responsible for it.
They didn't?
They did.
So they had a choice in the matter.
Mm-hmm.
Their evil choice God used to make something good happen, Joseph being.
So because Joseph was put into that position, he was able to save his family down the road when there was a big famine.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually a Buddhist thing too. I won't go into the story. That's a Buddhist thing too. Put your dung that you get from life and put it into your garden and let it grow. Rather than, there's a story of a king. I'll just tell it quick. It's kind of like that story, but the story of a king who had a doctor, basically a medical guy. And they went out and hunted one day, and the king fell, broke his arm. And the doctor was like, "Oh, this is good." And the king was like, "How dare you?" So he threw him in jail. The next day, the king goes out and hunts again. He gets captured by a tribe of somebody, some random tribe. And it was on a great day. It was a sacrificial day, so they wanted to sacrifice the king for their gods. But they noticed he had a broken arm, so they decided, "Oh, no, he's not perfect for our God." So they let him go. He goes back to the doctor. They're like, "Oh, you knew this was good the whole time. This is so good." He's like, "I'm so sorry I threw you into jail. I'm terrible." And he said, No, it's good that you threw me into jail, because I would have gone with you hunting that day, and I don't have a broken arm, and I would have been eaten." Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like this. In Buddhism, it's there is no good, no bad. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I'm saying here. But the contradiction I want to point out is you're saying two things, and that's what I'm having difficulty. You're saying that there is a choice, but God already knows it's going to happen, and He determines it.
Well, it's only a problem if you are assuming we're talking about total autonomous free will.
So what is... No. So if I'm assuming you mean God has total autonomous free will.
No.
God doesn't have He has limits?
He's limited by His nature.
What is His nature?
To be good, for example.
To be good.
So
be
He can't
holy.
be bad. That kind of thing. Okay. Yeah. So
And to do what is logically rational.
So He can't do all things.
He can do all things that His nature allows him. So like,
Okay,
so like the trope that's used to be a defeater of God, but that's can God build a rock big enough and strong enough that even He can't move it?
The answer is no.
Yeah, well, that's an illogical statement, and it doesn't, God doesn't operate illogically.
Well, it's not an illogical statement. It's just the answer is no, that He's limited. But yes, God does indeed have limits, because it's a charge to the idea that God has no limits, which is why I find it interesting. So we're limiting God.
No.
But let's go back to-
He's limited
There's a
by
very important distinction there. He limits himself.
No. So, one, I mean you. Sure. You
Yeah.
believe he limits himself. Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm always pointing back to what you guys are believing. This is there's a difference in saying it as if it is true, but I'm trying to talk about from what we can know. So,
Certainly.
but let's table that for a second. Let's get back to the free will thing because that to me is a pretty central issue to this.
Well, let me give you one thing to if you want to actually
Well,
delve
let's-
into the weeds a little bit, and then you can continue. This specific theological discussion is actually what's called compatibilism.
Yes.
Yeah, and so we have a compatibilist understanding of free will.
Yeah. Exactly.
That we are
So
responsible.
does Daniel Dennett.
We are responsible for our actions, and yet God is sovereign over all things.
I kind of like, you guys know who I'm sure you know who Christopher Hitchens is.
Yeah.
So one of his, because he didn't really care about these kind of arguments about like free will and stuff, but I love his answer to the free will, because they asked him, do you have free will, Christopher? And he says, I do, but I don't have any choice about it. Yeah, and I'm assuming kind of your point. There's some sort of, so God determines everything, he knows everything.
Yeah.
But he allows some room for a will to happen, because then the other argument is that you wouldn't be able to. There would be no reason to save your sins. There would be no reason to do anything at all.
Yeah.
But
there would
you're
be
introducing this part. It's a just basic philosophical contradiction. It should. I mean, this is just the only thing. So that's
How?
because you can't have if everything is determined. There's no room for free will. Now I'm not good on how because free will is not determined. If you get to choose, like let's say right now you get to choose asking me how. Did you choose that?
I would be making a choice.
But if everything's determined, you didn't, right? So if everything is determined, you had no control over that answer. So if everything's determined, every single thing that happens, you are not in control of. In fact, this is
it's
something
out of
like
control. I see.
maybe let me think about that wording to see if I want to let you pick apart my word control.
I'm trying to figure out what's behind your concern. Let's be transparent with you.
Incompatible worldviews, because you're saying there's a free will in this deterministic universe. If everything's determined, you cannot have free will by definition. Now, I could be totally wrong about this, because I actually know there are philosophers like Daniel Dennett, who's a big atheist. I think he is on board with compatibilism. There's another YouTube atheist, Cosmic Skeptic, somebody. I can't remember his name.
See, now,
he also is a compatibilist.
Obviously, they're different.
I think I could be wrong.
Their definition of compatibilism is going to differ from mine. So,
Agreed. Yeah. I just think it just seems to be a contradiction. For me, it's like I think maybe this is a little bit out of the subject. I think we should table this, because I think we can go down this route and not really get to the meat and guts of like should we believe in God, which I think should be the conversation.
Okay. So now, like I said, this is the foundation. This is what I'm believing. This is what I'm building everything on, and now we're going to get to the part that kind of splashes on everyone, and it kind of splashes on you.
Yes.
This is okay. So this is
Splash me.
Yeah. Well, maybe one day, maybe.
That was good. Maybe one day.
So okay. So this is the current condition for everyone alive on the face of the earth, right?
Okay.
It says, for God's wrath is revealed from heaven against all godlessness and unrighteousness of people who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. Since what can be known about God is evident among them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, that is his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen since the creation of the world, being understood through what he has made. As a result, people are without excuse.
Okay.
All people, everyone alive on the face of the earth, we are without excuse for God, who has revealed himself sufficiently in the things that he has made. For though they knew God, they did not glorify him or show him gratitude. Instead, their thinking became worthless, and their senseless hearts were darkened.
Yeah.
Claiming to be wise, they became fools.
Yeah.
And,
Which is a lot of truth to that, for sure. Even from my point of view.
Yeah, and so that is the basic Christian foundation that how we approach and interact with everyone in the world.
Yeah.
And that is why, and because of this truth, this is why we want to evangelize and have missionary societies that send missionaries all over the world, because everyone falls under this, and we are all subject to this wrath that is pressing down upon us.
Sure.
But the thing is we don't want to acknowledge this. What does it say we do? It says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all godlessness and unrighteousness of people who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth.
Yeah.
So because of our unrighteousness, because of our sin, because there are things that are in the creation that we would rather be given over to rather than submitting to God, we push him down in our thinking.
Okay.
And we push him down so much that we even convince ourselves of the lie that it's the truth.
That was the truth.
Whatever it is that we're seeking to believe. Whatever thing you're seeking to be given to that isn't submitting to God, that isn't holding a thought captive to Christ.
Say that again. Say that again. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I'm not following you. You're saying that so
God
God has revealed himself.
Yes, sufficiently.
Sufficiently. And so not believing in God is
It's a suppression of the truth.
suppression of the truth. Okay.
But in order
I
to-
actually know that that's the truth.
Well, in order to suppress it, you have to be in contact with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I am in contact with it, and I know the truth, but I'm suppressing it because of logic and reason.
No, you're suppressing it because of what this would say, a love for sin.
A love for sin. Okay, so a love for sin. Okay. So I'm suppressing it because I love sin. And
Whatever that might be in each person's case.
It manifests differently.
Okay. I'm just trying to follow you on this. This is fine.
Yeah.
None of this has anything to do with the argument against God. But I think that's your foundation for thinking. But great. Thank you for sharing.
And for some, that sin is going to be, whatever fleshly pleasure you want to give yourself to. For some, it's going to be just, I want to call my own shots. It's just personal autonomy. I don't want to I don't want to submit to anybody.
What if one who submits to everyone but doesn't believe in God?
I mean,
That's also a sin?
if we're not submitting to God, yeah.
Okay. So do you...
It's also important to point out that we're claiming that disbelief in God, not having reasons to believe in God, we would say it's not a matter of lacking evidence. We don't think that you lack evidence. We think that you are making the choice to come up with reasons to not believe in God because you love your sin more than Him.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's an important piece to understand where we're going to come from as we talk about reasons for God.
Than that. Okay. So
Oh,
I'm just trying to. I want to say it in a very plain language. Let's say.
Yeah.
So you're saying because I don't believe in God, I love this other idea called sin.
No, it's
Cart before the horse.
Yeah, I don't want to believe in God
I
because,
don't want to believe in God. But
Therefore,
I have
I
enough.
want.
I have enough evidence to believe in God.
according to what
What is that evidence?
You just read it.
His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen in the things that He has made.
Okay, so from my point of view, you're presupposing that the Bible is true. So this is kind of like this after thing later. Like that's fine if even according
Okay.
and not every Christian believes this,
Okay.
by the way.
Yeah.
So that's my issue with it. That's fine. This is theology.
Yeah,
I'm curious
well,
about how
okay.
do we know what is true? You're making real quick. You're making a
Go
claim
ahead.
that I actually do know what's true, and I'm suppressing it because I'd rather follow my sin. Right. So me saying that there's
Scripture
no
arguing that, not me. But
okay,
fair enough.
I understand. Let me just make a blanket statement. I understand that you guys take the Bible to be an authority, or that God is your authority for everything that you know and everything like that. So everything that I'm saying, when I'm saying you, my position, of course, is your own choice of belief, right? So it's. I understand where you're coming from. So you don't. It's not totally necessary to correct it on every turn.
Fair
I understand what
Fair
you
enough.
believe.
Fair enough.
But see, that's where I'm shaken up. So that's fine. That's what the Bible says. Great. I'll even grant that.
Okay.
How do you know that's true?
Revelation from God. The same way that you know anything is true, because it's revelation from God.
I don't know anything to be true except one thing.
Okay.
See what I'm saying? So like that's just
Okay, let me
Before we get into theology,
Yeah.
theology, I love the conversation about the nature of God or whatever,
Yeah.
but it's if this is a conversation about whether or not it's good to believe in God or whether or not there are
Yeah.
good reasons to believe in God, this is just theology is kind of like trimming the branches or playing in the tree tips.
yeah, let me just continue then, because again, I'm just laying the foundation of what I'm resting on.
I'd like to, well, the found.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's actually my argument is that that's not your foundation, and I know that's, and I'm trying not to say it like putting words in your mouth, but from my perspective, it seems that your foundation really is God is real, God is true, and the Bible's the revealed word of that God. That's the foundation.
That's everybody's foundation.
So that's also my foundation.
Well, that you don't want to be real, that you suppress in your thinking, according to what God
Okay,
says.
so again, this is what they call the Cartesian circle, right? You're saying the Bible's true. Why? Because it's revealed by the Bible.
No.
Okay. What evidence do we have, or what argument do you have for me to take the Bible seriously at all, outside of the Bible itself?
Outside of the Bible
Yeah,
itself.
because you can in this.
Okay,
I'm-
well, let me just lay
real quick
another
before-
card on
let
the
me-
table.
Let me just say it one more time.
Okay.
So, and the reason that's an important question is because you have to now, to be going back to my epistemology, when I was saying everybody makes a claim about reality. Islam says one thing, Christianity says one thing, Judaism says one thing. We'll just stick with those three for the time being because they're all related. So Islam would say the same thing about the Quran. Why are they wrong?
Why are they wrong? I mean, you want me to step into that?
Well,
I'll give you an answer,
The
but
point is that we need a method
Yeah.
to differentiate reality from imagination.
okay.
And so
Yeah.
you make a claim,
All
Buddhists
right.
make a claim, Islam make a
Yeah.
claim. Why is this claim that God is true because God's true? You have to give me something outside of it, or you have a Cartesian circle. You can't
Okay,
just
okay,
reason
well,
from this
okay.
claim that I was begging the question. That is the clearest
No,
definition of begging the
but the
question.
thing is how much evidence do I need to give you for a God who says He's revealed Himself sufficiently to you?
You need to give me something that any evidence. I don't even care. Just give me one
Okay.
sliver of evidence that
Okay.
shows that the Bible is
Okay.
correct.
God has revealed Himself to you sufficiently.
That's not not evidence because
Yeah.
I would say how or where. I don't experience it. What are you talking about?
Okay, you
Why
experience it
not?
every moment.
Why not Zeus?
You experience it every moment because it.
Why isn't it not Zeus?
Because Zeus does not meet the preconditions of intelligibility as God has revealed it to us in His scriptures.
Yes, he does.
Okay.
He has all the omniproperties.
But now you're extending on something that you don't actually believe.
Okay, no, I'm not making. Don't you said this last time? I'm not making the claim that Zeus is true.
Yeah.
I'm presenting a counter argument because I'm trying to understand how you differentiate from somebody who would believe in Zeus.
Okay.
I don't believe in Zeus.
Okay.
I'm just saying that you have to differ. The reason that we can't call it knowledge is because you're not differentiating between the two. The only thing you have is it's true because it's true.
So I want to add a piece that might be helpful.
Okay.
This is I can only speak for myself. I don't know where Joe's at on this one, but it seems like you're noticing correctly that we have God at the top. He's our presupposition. He's our supreme authority. He is the one that's the standard by which we derive all other truth claims. So it is correct to say of me that I presuppose God. I'm not trying to prove God.
Sure.
I think that's different from you because it seems that at the top of your system is reason, as if God must be proven to you. God must be validated through reason. Whereas I don't accept that. I say, I presuppose it's obvious that God is true. And then from that, I have the ability to use logic and reason coherently to describe and evaluate the evidences that support, but don't necessarily lay out the existence of God.
So that's the class. That's what they call reverse reasoning, right? Backwards reasoning is what they call that because you're beginning with your conclusion.
Yeah.
And then
that's what I'm admitting to you. I'm admitting
I know
to
that,
you
and
that's the case.
But that's the point is that that's just not a good argument because it's like because then you're making a special pleading case because within science we don't do that. We can't do that. We can't presuppose anything.
I'm not advocating this is something you can do with everything.
Yeah. So, but that's my point when I say as my position there are no good reasons. That backwards reasoning is just not a way, or it has been an unreliable way to come to conclusions about reality, and we can show that not just with Christianity, but with little things like demons aren't the cause of your sickness or whatever. I mean, I'm not making a promotion of science. Just saying that we should go where evidence leads, not try to find evidence for our our convictions.
I agree with you on most of those points. I would not say that this is a good way to live. If you presuppose other truths in this way, your life's going to turn up in shambles. I'm saying there's only one legitimate truth that is worthy and acceptable to be treated that way. It's the existence of God, the triune God, as described in the Bible.
So this is what they call it. So in philosophy, they call that special pleading, right? So it's just the reason that that's a fallacy is because I can say that about literally anything. I can say that the one thing that is actually important is Allah.
Fair.
Right?
Now let's talk about that.
So the point,
Okay,
exactly.
well,
so the point is, since I can say anything about anything, I can presuppose anything I want. I can say naturalistic pantheism, that nature itself has the omni properties.
Okay.
But we have, if we're trying to find out what's true, and I hope you care about what's true.
Absolutely.
You can't just.
But remember, my overarching operating reality is that I hold every thought captive to Christ.
Well, that's not really a counter argument. So that's just. I understand that, but I'm trying to point out how I feel from my position that that's just not a reasonable position. That actually isn't.
It would be negligent if I said that's just what I do to work within that way of life. But it's not just what I do. I start there, and then I believe, and I would be happy to talk about this at length, that as you put to test that presupposition to confirm it with the experience of life and the different other evidences around us, the only one that maintains coherence and is reasonable is the belief in God, the triune God, as really revealed in the Bible.
Well, it doesn't. Okay.
So
You're right.
I'm
We can
admitting
discuss.
that.
That's another conversation we can discuss at length. That God explains everything, right? That's what kind of you just said.
No, not really.
So what I heard you say was, I presuppose this, and it's okay to do because after I do my logic and reason, God always stands. God, it's coherent with all those logical arguments.
Almost.
But the
Almost.
coherence isn't the authority.
The what?
The coherence of that isn't the authority. God is.
Yeah, that's. Yeah. So what
coherence
justifies
isn't the authority.
Yeah.
We're not saying coherence justifies our God. We're saying God justifies
thank
the ability to cohere.
No, I understand that. Yeah. That's my argument is backwards reasoning.
But-
So
but
why
the,
not Allah? Why
Well,
not
okay,
Zeus?
okay. Well, okay.
See what I'm saying?
Let me
Cartesian circle.
lay another card on the table. One of the things that prevents us from submitting to a belief in God is that we don't our thinking is in rebellion to Him, and so we have to.
So don't trust your thinking.
No, well, we need to. One of the repentance is it's actually a military term to do an about face.
Yeah, an about face.
Yeah. We need
Turn
to
around.
change our minds.
Well, yeah, to repent means turn around.
Yeah.
Just turn
We need
around.
to change the way we're thinking.
Doesn't mean change.
That's one of the things that we're called to do. And rather than run from the God that we know, we're supposed to run to Him and submit to Him.
Again, though, everything you just said is this presupposition that you would just admit it to, which is fine. Admitting to it isn't a good argument, in my opinion, from my perspective, because admitting to it is just saying, yeah, it's illogical, but it's okay.
Okay, but
this is what I mean by special pleading.
The thing
you have to
is
show, real quick, you have to
go ahead.
show why it's not special pleading. You have to show why it is God of the Bible and not Zeus.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
So that's where we have to get into. So and that would be. So it's basically why presuppose that.
Yeah.
And you have to. And it can't be something because the Bible, right? So it can't be. It wouldn't be logically consistent to say, well, I presuppose that because the Bible says to, right? Or that I presuppose that because I believe the Bible's true. That's just saying I presuppose it because I presuppose it. That's not evidence. So what I mean by evidence is one shred, anything that moves the position of the Bible, just maybe a billionth of a percent towards truth. And I've yet to hear an argument from anyone.
Okay, but Well, you can
But
extend.
I heard you.
Yeah, you
Oh,
can
yeah,
extend
yeah.
it. But let me. The thing is
He's got
our,
plenty to talk.
our conviction as Christians and as a seeking to be a faithful faithful to what God has commanded us to do. We can lay out, and I'm sure he'll do his best to do so. We can lay out a position for you to analyze and look at. But the ultimate convincing of I'll take it. Of you saying, okay, you've got me. The ultimate convincing is not for us to do. We can offer proofs. Proof is different from persuasion. And so
Exactly.
And that's I would say that's a work of conversion that needs to take place in your heart for you to truly appreciate it.
The question is, how do we know, right? Like, what do we know, right? And we can't just make a special pleading case for God, because the way we find out other truths about things, like the germ theory of disease, well, I don't know when you guys position evolution, we can get into that too. These things that we absolutely know the Earth is round.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys believe that either, but these there's reasons and evidence that gives that. You want to say, and even like let's say you're given a medicine by a doctor, you don't know what it is, or we do logic and reason without even thinking about it. Sometimes we're like, well, let's see, what is the evidence? What does this show? Has this been success? Is this a successful medicine or whatnot? We do that everywhere, but I know truth in those ways.
Yeah.
But when it comes to God, throw that out the window. I believe God first.
So you think we're saying that?
I'm basically straw manning you.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to hear an argument. I'm trying to get to the point of why presuppose. Now, why not presuppose magical pixie fairies instead?
Okay.
I hear your question.
That's the problem.
Well,
and that's why it's logically incoherent.
and maybe you can tease this out, but it's the impossibility of the contrary.
To go that route, sure.
To deny God is to ultimately every other worldview that would seek to supplant God's place. It ends in absurdity.
So let me
No,
do
it doesn't. That is just philosophically incorrect. If you want to bring up maybe St. Thomas Aquinas' contingency arguments, like I'm assuming absurdity meaning like infinite regresses.
Things like that.
You need some prime mover. You need some perfect truth. You need some whatever at the beginning.
Well, maybe he's going to go a different way with that.
There could be.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna say I can explain why I think that's a wrong statement, but we can
Okay.
move on.
Fair enough.
Well, maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not, but we're here, so why not go to it?
Yeah.
Greg Bonson is a great resource on this. Do you know him?
I never heard of them.
Oh, please bank it away in the back of your mind. Greg
I'll
Bonson.
just write them down. Greg.
Great job.
Greg.
Yeah, Greg.
Greg Bonson.
Yeah,
Bonson.
BAHNSEN.
I can give you one of these.
Thank you. Greg Bonson. Is he? What is he?
Oh, he was a
How do you spell his
Christian
name?
philosopher.
G-R-E-G-G?
Yeah, just one G.
G and then B
BAHNSEN.
S-E-N.
Yeah.
Greg Bonson. Okay.
Yep. The best summary of what we're about to talk about comes from him. You can find one of his debates online with an atheist. They go into a bunch of different points, and he goes into this concept that specifically the triune God as revealed in the Bible, you have a way to indirectly prove God. And he goes on to explain that if you evaluate, let's say, the metaphysics, the epistemology, and the ethics of life, and you're looking for coherence, the only one that will provide coherence through all of those layers is the triune God of the Bible. And so he begins to unpack that in his debate.
Okay.
Now, the reason that's relevant is because I affirm what you're saying. Anybody can make any claim about any top deity. Sure. It could be Allah, it could be pixies, it could be Christian God, it could be whatever.
Could be nothing.
Sure. You can make that claim.
Literally be
But
signal.
part of what helps us see the evidence of whether that's true or not is by evaluating the outworkings of that presupposition through those various kinds of layers, like understanding the metaphysics of reality, epistemology of reality, and ethics of reality. And the argument that we would make is, go ahead, try to do it with Allah. Go ahead, try to do it with nothing. Go ahead, try to do it with pixies. And if if you line up those three, you're going to find that it's incoherent. It's
not.
It can be absurd.
Sorry.
That's the claim that we're making. I know you don't agree, but that's the claim that we would make.
Well, let me just so for example, there's a great philosopher. By the way, everyone who's watching this, look this guy up. He's on YouTube. His name is Tom Jump. He's an unknown philosopher.
Tom Jump.
Tom Jump. Yeah, nobody knows who he is.
I think you mentioned about one of our discussions.
I did.
Yeah.
Because of his epistemology, I utilize a lot to show that there can be an objective morality. Oh, I'm sorry, his morality model. There can be. Atheists also have an objective.
I don't know if we have time to discuss that, but I wouldn't mind discussing.
Yeah, exactly. But he says that anything. So this is a good point. It's like anything that the supernatural can explain, the unknown natural also explains. So you can give it. It doesn't. That's the point.
Unknown natural.
The unknown natural. So you say God. We can say that it's naturalistic pantheism with the same properties. You can just add the same omni properties to naturalism. Let's say it's an unknown natural thing. We don't know what it is, but it has these properties and it explains everything. And it can explain everything that the Christian God can explain, except it does one step better, is it doesn't require extra explanation. So it satisfies the rule of Occam's razor. So Occam's razor, which is the simplest explanation, is usually the best. It's not a hard and true fact, but it's just usually more correct. And you're faced with 2 or 3 or more conclusions, you need to just automatically go with the simplest explanation because it's more likely to be true, and that's how you can prove it wrong. So I could just say, instead of Jehovah or Yahweh, naturalistic pantheism, I could say unknown natural. Literally, and there's no difference.
Supposedly. I would love to go through that with you.
Let's do it.
But let's get a little more precise. What do you actually put at the top? You say that there are no good reasons
Remember,
for God.
my epistemology is don't know.
Yeah, so
don't know. I don't know if it's a God. I don't know if it's pixies. I don't know if it's Allah. I don't know if it's Zeus. I don't know if it's and nothing. I don't know if it's something. I don't know because the universe could be cyclic. It doesn't have to have some infinite regress. It could be a circle instead. So there is no beginning or end. And it doesn't need to go on in a line. Infinite regress is a Western problem anyway. It's not even existent in Buddhism.
yeah.
So that's just, yeah. So that's the thing. So again, we're going back to our presuppositions. We're going back to, like, he may say, because you can have a very airtight explanation. Like in science, there's a classic thing they say, just because it sounds good doesn't mean it's true. And they always disprove themselves. And the reason they're doing that is because they go where evidence leads. They're not trying to come up with the best explanation. They're trying to find the truth.
Sure, that would be confirmation bias.
Exactly. And so which is what presupposing. Well, confirmation bias is a little different. Actually, that's a different subject. Because confirmation bias is looking out in the world and seeing that correlates to my thinking. Like when I said earlier, I saw God in everything. It's confirmation bias because it began with the idea that God already exists completely. So I saw God in everything. Like God is right here with us having this conversation, making this a great conversation, and the light and the beauty and the smells and the sound and everything. It's just God's perfect creation. I still have a lot of these temperaments, but without the God part.
Yeah, you should appreciate reality. I'm glad you
it's
do.
Beautiful. And I'm sure you learned that in meditation, where that this moment, once it's paid attention to adequately, without the noise of thinking, without the noise of ideas, beliefs, all that, is remarkable. I could even grant it sacred.
See, I would have to then push back on that we're commanded to think and engage thoughtfully and carefully. We're commanded as Christians to love the Lord our God with all our heart, all our mind, and all our strength. So all of the mental capacity and exercise and energy, we're to focus that on a obedient love to God.
Yeah.
And so that's why we do things like this. We do things like this because we desire for people to repent and believe in Christ.
I have nothing but respect, by the way, and especially the fact that y'all are willing to do this. You know how many people these days are willing to challenge your ideas? Like even myself, like if you got the truth, give it to me. Like I'm here, I want to hear it, and I'm willing to change my mind at any moment.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's rare in our culture, and I think it's so great that you're even throwing this on YouTube and you're making it,
Warts and all.
Words and all, yeah, just making it about unless you edit it cleverly.
No, I'm not.
I don't know how you would
No,
anyway
I'll
to
give
do
you
that.
my word. I will just be part 1, 2,
I
and 3,
trust
whatever.
you. Don't even worry. I'm not worried about that. Even if you do, I'm not even really worried about it because it doesn't matter about truth, right? Like truth is what matters, not my ego. So, but I think it's remarkable that you guys are willing to sit down and have a conversation, especially for 2 hours on a Tuesday. You know, a lot of people have other things to do, and a lot of people don't want to challenge themselves. And I find that a lot with Christians, they don't want to challenge themselves. Like even at the square, when we do that, 10% of them really want to talk like this. Most of them are like, well, it's just what I believe. That's just what it is. And that's when I go on my way. And actually, it's still what I've heard from y'all. So, to get back
But
to the
do you know why we
conversation.
persist at this? You don't want to know why we persist at this in the face of a lot of people doing just that? 90% of people want to just keep on going because we have a conviction that faith comes by hearing and hearing the words of Christ.
Yeah.
And we do not know who the next person is that God is going to do a work in them. We don't know.
Yeah.
That's why we spent 2 hours with you just now.
Well, that's why. I mean, I think we have pretty similar motivations other than our fundamental axioms. But really, just if we think something is true, nothing better than a conversation is what will change minds, or not even just change minds, but to really hash out what would be true. Conversation, because we just have a general lack of conversation in this culture, particularly politically and other stuff. I know it's another conversation, so, but it is very, very good that you're as convicted as I am, or you're as concerned about truth as I am, and that you're willing to sit down and have this conversation. So it makes me happy that and even recorded. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So you mentioned you studied a little bit of Augustine.
Very little. I annotated about 2 years ago. I took his book because I'm trying to enter into the philosophy of religion, a PhD.
Yeah.
And that was I thought, well, I got to learn it from the source. You know, I got to learn these guys from the source. So I started annotating it, but very, very little. Very,
Maybe
very
the most
little.
brilliant mind that the world ever knew.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
And
I would say Darwin.
So did
No,
you?
I'm fine.
I know you're joking.
I am joking. Yeah.
So,
but no. Actually, I won't totally not grant that. I think Darwin is pivotal for sure
Pivotal, maybe. Okay, I have to grant.
and accurate.
Amazingly
accurate.
No, that's a different discussion.
He predicted
Okay.
things that
That's a
he
rabbit
didn't
trail.
know, and we found out now.
That's a rabbit trail. I don't want to go down.
that one either.
Have you read up on Augustine's his personal testimony?
He says it in his Confessions in the beginning. If I remember it correctly, he stole apples with a friend from somebody, and then realized that this was wrong, and asked why is it wrong, and kind of went down this rabbit trail, and then realized that it was God that was the ground of morality. I could be totally butchering that.
It's actually much simpler than that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that was in there.
Maybe
I'm certain that was part of his makeup. I'm sure.
He tried to. Anyway.
Well, he was.
Excuse me.
He heard some children in the garden singing a song to themselves. It's this little song that they were teaching, little Christian families were teaching their children at the time. Take and read, and he knew what I was talking about because his mother was a Christian.
Yeah, that's right. His mom was.
So he went and took up the text of Scripture, and I believe he was reading the book of Romans. Reading the book of Romans.
Before the Bible was there. By the way.
No, it was before. What was it?
Like all the books were put together.
It might have been a scroll.
Yeah.
But what was it put together into one codex? I don't know if he had one, but he had the book of Romans.
Yeah.
The letter, Paul's letter to Romans, and reading that, God opened his eyes, gave him a mind to understand, a heart to believe. Yeah. Just transformed right in the moment, and he was. If he's not the most brilliant, he's one of the most brilliant people that has existed in history.
Well, of course, see, I'm going to say Darwin or Einstein are one of the most brilliant, or I think Elon Musk is brilliant too. But really for information, Einstein, Darwin, Richard Dawkins, but of course that's my bias.
They're all contemporaries.
The contemporaries. Why? Well, to go back, I think Galileo, people who make real discoveries.
Galileo was a good Christian.
Yeah.
He was submitted to the church.
No.
Sure he was. He submitted to the church.
So we can go back to that. Galileo, the evidence for him being a Christian is nil. He thought, let's not talk about this.
Yeah, fair
Because I
enough.
think I'm going to start talking about things I don't understand. I'm going to make a fool of myself.
Yeah. But
So be it. He was a Christian. Doesn't matter. He
Yeah.
presented he was presented the torture chamber because he asked people, the higher ups, to look through his telescope to show, hey, look, the moon is round.
Yeah.
Hey, look, it's not made of cheese or whatever it was.
No,
And they just refused to do it. They didn't want to.
The Earth is not the center. It's
not the center. That's what
Yeah,
it was.
it
It's
was
a heliocentric
model. Yeah.
Like Copernicus came around and
Yeah.
all that. But the history of science is, to me, the history of science is the history of knowledge. Like what we can know
Yeah.
in philosophy. But religion never makes predictions. That's how you can know something is pretty more certain in probability than that. Yeah. So
So what do you do with biblical prophecy?
give me a good one.
Isaiah 53.
Okay. So what does that one say? I'm not familiar.
Let's read it.
Can I use the restroom real quick while you find that?
Yeah.
I'm drinking too much.
Yeah.
And then you get coffee going, and then I get conversation going. Sorry.
For history.
What,
For Christianity, because you were saying that she doesn't have the concepts.
Yes. This is good.
Yeah, that
This
has
is
a lot
good.
of the framework.
Well, I'll just tell you, so kind of like what I was talking about with, understanding philosophy from an Eastern context, or looking at the same things that Westerners do versus the Eastern context, that they're just complete foreign. So like this first sentence, you may have heard the scripture verse, John. Even hearing that is like, what literally is so odd. Like, why are you even talking about a book? It's just a weird thing for people who have just never come into contact with like a deep devotion to some old book.
Yeah.
And I know you guys don't think it's just a book, but anyway, so it's just
Well,
interesting. So it's like the thing is, if you, I think a way to convince people isn't to throw scripture at them, because you could be. That's why Aquinas took the time to try to make logical arguments for the existence of God, because that's far more convincing for people during the time of the Enlightenment.
Well, it's not.
Well, not during the time of the
It's not
Enlightenment, but that was
just-
far more convincing for people.
It's not. That's a little bit of oversimplification of what
So,
we're trying to do.
absolutely, it is,
It's not just a. I'm just going to throw scriptures. I'm not even going to interact with you. But there is a certain conviction that God has promised in His Word that His Word will not return void. We do have.
But it's that part.
Yeah.
It's that original conviction. It's that precept. It's that presupposition that this is somehow a divine book. That's weird. So, like, if you would say it to like I don't know, somebody else.
We are the people of the book.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
There's a lot of people with many books. That's the other
and
thing,
what
yeah.
the book says in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 is that the preaching of the cross is folly to those who are perishing. And so it's no surprise that those who are perishing, those who are in their sin, who are rebelling against God, it's no surprise that they would find this foolish. They would find this something to be mocked.
True.
But to those who are being saved, it's the power of God.
So Paul was writing.
To those who are being saved, it is the power of God.
Yeah. So this is the point, though. It's like, so this is our fundamental difference. It's really just always coming down to this. Is that you're trying to give reason to an already positive belief, rather than going from bottom up. So just even like you just said from like 1 Corinthians, what you just said, Paul. If I could tell somebody, if somebody doesn't know, Paul was writing 2 churches that he set up. Like he was the first, but missionary. He set up a bunch of churches around. And these churches started having problems. They were having worship problems. They didn't understand how to conduct church. They had some basic issues with the whole Christian model, and there wasn't really even a solidified thing yet during the time. And so he's our earliest writer, and he's just basically talking to them and giving them advice. Now, what we do now is we read it and say, "Oh, that's advice for everyone, and it's divine." And that's just want to make that point why it would be weird to somebody.
Well, it's
because that's why it's weird.
Yeah, but the thing is it's advice for it's advice for the people of God.
It was advice for a particular church. That's the Church of Corinthians.
Yeah.
In fact, he probably didn't even write 2 Corinthians. So that's the other thing. How deeply do y'all have you gone into the historicity of the Bible, like how the Bible was formed, what the books were, and all that? So we do all that, like historians.
Sure, and there's a wide range of opinions on that.
Yep.
It's not really, actually. There's pretty good beliefs. I mean, like Bart Ehrman, this guy I'm actually reading right now. Did Jesus exist? He did exist. we know that historically we can say that he did exist. There's a group of people named the mythicists who think that Jesus was simply a mythical thing, and it was just demonstrably wrong. Like we could very much prove, just like we could prove that Caesar existed, that Jesus existed. Not the same amount of evidence, but we could pretty much assume that that's probably true. So, but the consensus with scholars is that he existed, and but we always go with consensus. So there's not really that. The varying opinions are in like small percentages. So that's another part
standard of truth?
No, justified truth is just the philosophical standard of truth. But I don't think there is, again, there's no certainty.
Well, here,
So then
right,
you have to lean on
important.
consensus in
You have
order
to-
to have
well-
a pragmatic understanding.
Well, you have to lean on consensus to lead the consensus of expertise, not consensus of most people. Like I could say most people believe in God, doesn't make God true.
here, let me.
You determine who's the right people that are the individuals to determine that?
I don't, experts do. So, like, let's say you can't, so, like, you wouldn't go to a dentist to have brain surgery, right?
No.
Do you determine that the surgeon is the expert there?
No, but some human did. Someone else did.
Exactly. So you do that, and that's the best you can do based on probable. So I don't
best
have the
you can
model.
do. Best
Exactly.
you can do.
Remember, there's no certainty. Your model that there is
Hey,
certainty.
real quick before let me just give you something to look up if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
want.
yeah, yeah. I'll look at this guy's argument.
Do another bullet point. Do James White versus the guy you just mentioned, the
Bart Ehrman.
Bart Ehrman, yeah. James
Okay.
White versus Bart Ehrman.
Yeah.
You guys still working on that coffee, or can I clear some of those cups out of your way?
I'm all set.
Yeah, we're all done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Oh, it's also worth mentioning in the Bonson debate, we acknowledge that debate was lopsided and can be painful to listen to sometimes.
Yeah.
Why? Who was he debating? Was he kind of a? Who was he debating?
He was, it's actually Bonson versus Greg Stein.
Yeah.
Greg Stein.
Yeah, he was a pretty a well-known atheist of his era in the mid '80s to mid '90s. However, just let you watch it.
I'll
Yeah,
look
I don't
it
want.
up.
I don't want
I
to.
love debates.
I don't want to
Yeah.
color your impressions of it. But
Sure.
yeah, Greg Stein is yeah. But Bonson has he has a very well-developed catalog of teaching and debates and.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. I mean, I don't like to dive in too much of theology because it becomes, if you really go into it, it's what I call biblical fan fiction. There's a lot of interpolation into the Bible. A lot of like Jordan Peterson is the expert at this.
Mm-hmm.
He would read, like, you think the 12 verses of Cain and Abel have all the wisdom in the world. There's no way they could have known that without some divine whatever. I would, this is because he's working backwards. But yeah, I'd be happy to listen to that. But again, as long as it's not like biblical fan fiction or like just theology, because theology is rested on the presupposition that God exists, that God is true, God of the Bible, God of Abraham.
Well, that is why we're hopeful you'll watch it, because he unpacks why we think that is the correct way to reason.
Yeah.
To give an indirect proof. I'm not saying it's a direct proof for God, but it is an indirect proof that is helpful.
And that's fine. Yeah, and basically everything in science is indirect, right?
That's why I'm hopeful you'll like it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
again, varying degrees of probability. Just like, is there a car out there or is there a red pixie out there? Both are indirect.
Yeah.
We can assume one, not the other.
Now, I do want to go back to Isaiah 53.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so my point about predictions, let me just make this clear before we talk about prophecy. Predictions are an important part of my epistemology because in part of science, it's what they call novel testable predictions, means that we can test it. So, for example, Albert Einstein, when he promoted his general theory of relativity,
Yeah.
he said, if I am right about this, during a solar eclipse or lunar eclipse, I
Yeah.
always mix the two.
I think it's-
When the moon goes in front of the sun,
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
lunar eclipse.
When
No, it's a solar eclipse.
It's a solar eclipse.
When it goes
During
in
a
front of the
solar
sun.
eclipse, the light refracts,
exactly.
and
So
you can see what's behind the
yeah,
sun.
it took him forever to take a picture, but he did. So he took a picture and he could see, and he was right.
Yeah.
So he made a prediction about something we didn't know, and then predicted it, and that leads way amazing credence to that model.
Yeah.
That's why that model
Yeah.
stood.
But the light refracts because it's refracting on gravity. Is what
Well,
yeah.
the idea that space-time is curved, right? So it's not that it's about around large masses.
Yeah.
So and it can be detectable by seeing large
Yeah.
masses. But the point is that he made a novel, testable prediction. That's what science is. Another example is that there was a moon. There was a spacecraft going out to take pictures of the moon. There's a particular moon, and the scientist said, I just learned like this 2 days ago. The scientist said, based on gravity and different calculations, he's like, there's probably going to be volcanoes on this moon. It was one of the moons of Jupiter. We didn't know it. We didn't directly observe it. But then we took pictures of the volcanoes. In fact, it was one of the most volcanous.
Volcanous,
Is that a word? Volcanous? What's the word?
volcanic,
It sounds fun.
No. What's the word? Like
Vol-
the islands of Hawaii are.
volcanic.
Volcanic, yes, is one of the most volcanic moons we've seen. So we made a novel testable prediction.
Was that the one that had ice eruptions?
That's it did also have ice eruptions.
Yeah.
It spewed ice out from its poles, but Titan also is another interesting one too. That's I can't remember if that's Saturn or Jupiter. But so my point is that leads so much more credence. So when I go back to, we can all just make claims, like I say, fairy pixies, whatever.
Yeah.
If you can, and when I say that religion doesn't give any good predictions, is that if you can say, okay, take something we know and predict something we don't know.
With the
And-
scientific method applied.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why, religion doesn't do that for us. But religion makes scientific claims.
Well,
That's the difference. You want to say that this is indeed the way the world is, and that's why there's a conflict. Now, if you were to be like, for me, I think it's a more honest position to say, well, it totally is contradictory, but it doesn't matter. I believe it anyway, and that's fine.
yeah.
That's honest, but it is not reconciled with science.
Well, okay.
Wow. I totally disagree.
Before we get
Well,
to
let's go
Isaiah,
into that then.
before we get to Isaiah 53, let me ask a quick question. Does scientific prediction and discovery, does that depend upon induction?
Yeah, certainly, a lot of
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
In fact, if you're going to bring up the problem of induction,
You've read
David Hume.
Hume, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why I say at the beginning of my epistemology, there's no certainty. There's only differing levels of probability, which is a Humean thinking. And that's science. I mean, there is no certainty in science.
Yeah.
There's nothing certain in science. Nothing.
You sound pretty certain about that.
Yeah, but that's just semantic
Okay.
argumentation.
So,
It's still important for how you live.
yeah.
Again, that's changing the subject, which is fine. We can talk about it. So if you want to relate how to live based on your way of thinking, then that's a different conversation, right? You can't say because you live a certain way that then this is true, right? Those
Didn't
are
argue that.
You made the statement. It depends how you live, right? Based on
It changes the way you
epistemological.
live. Yeah.
Based on how is that an argument based on what's true?
Well, it definitely serves as an evidence of the internal integrity of a worldview. And so it's
Even if you have the most integritous worldview, we're making up all these words today.
Integris?
Is that good? We should name a planet called Integris. If we have
I think it's an Acura.
please don't look any of this up. Even though it sounds like, again, the thing in science, even though it sounds good, even though it's perfectly, it makes the most sense.
Cogent?
Doesn't mean, well, cogent, it's not cogent. Cogent is about argumentation. A valid argument means that its premises are also true, and it's valid, makes a cogent argument.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the coherence of a worldview justifies the truth of what's being claimed. I'm not arguing for the coherence theory of truth. What I am saying is that it helps, to use your language, make it more probable. It gives you greater and greater degrees of assurance or probability that it is true.
I'm saying it doesn't, because
Yeah, so it's a fundamental difference.
Well, let me explain why it doesn't. And this is why it's because it's literally a totally different branch of thinking. Because you can't, just because, let's say I have a really good lie in my head that I have cancer, I'm going to survive it. I know it, God told me, whatever, or my fairy grandmother told me, whatever. And it gives me purpose in life. It makes me feel happy every day. Does it make it true?
No.
No. So there's a separation between how to live a good life and whether or not that's good or not, and what is actually true.
And what is
That's the
actually
point.
good. You have
And what
to
we're
find
talking
out.
about, what is in concern here is like what is actually true. Now, there's a different conversation to be had, and I'm not saying they're not related. I'm just saying that it's not. It doesn't give any. It's not evidence for its truth factor. Just because Christianity has done a lot of good things in the world. It's helped a lot of people. It's also done a lot of bad things. But just because of that doesn't make it true. It doesn't matter. So like I said earlier, somebody can believe exactly what I've said and be really depressed. Somebody can believe exactly what I said and be really, really happy. It doesn't make them being depressed or happy has no credence on epistemology. There's no credence on whether or not something is actually true. Because when you conflate the two, then you're saying, well, he's a good person. Therefore, his belief, because my mom will do that. She'll say, like, look at Seth. It's one of our cousins. She's become a big born-again Christian. And he's all happy. He's like, look how good his life was. Doesn't that make you think? Doesn't that mean it's true? Right? And that's what I'm objecting to. I'm saying that actually says nothing about it, because you can look at Buddhists who feel that way. You can look at...
I mean, there are Christians in a certain Asian country that don't have it going very well right now. And they're...
where are you talking? In North Korea?
No, well, there too. Yeah, there too. If you were caught in possession of a Bible, it's a death sentence.
Yeah, it's North Korea. Is
So it's not. I think that's a poor standard to determine whether or not to submit to Christianity is the bennies, because
the bennies?
the benefits.
Oh,
yeah,
I did not understand.
Because
the
one thing that we're told to be certain of in this life is to expect suffering. Because the thing is it nice? Is it good when God blesses and brings comforts? Yeah, but that's not always a guarantee.
Exactly, yeah.
There have been most Christians throughout the history did not have it so well.
I mean, especially during the reign of Marcus Aurelius and after. I mean, it was just active persecution of Christians.
And fed the lions for sport.
Yeah. Anyway, but to go back to the point, that's the point, and actually you're agreeing with my point, is that just because people do good, whatever, how somebody lives is not evidence for any truth. So like a scientist, like he doesn't bring in his how he lives his life in order to do good science. You just don't need it, and that's the point. So
dishonesty.
But if there is a disconnect between the two,
yeah,
it is apparent more often than not, and it shows you that there's a problem within the system.
I don't think that So, do you mean a disconnect between epistemology and how to live your life? Yeah. So I don't think that there is a disconnect.
Like if I claim to be a follower of Christ, but then I go out and I murder people.
Yeah.
That says something about my belief system.
It doesn't. That's my point. No, it doesn't.
Wow.
I'm saying it doesn't say anything. It may. Okay, let me rephrase that. It doesn't say anything about the truthity of your system, of whether or not that's true. It definitely is a great way to indicate how somebody behaves. Like if you want to know how somebody behaves, see how they think. Like learn what they're thinking. Like you can look at, like why were abortion clinics bombed, or why are a bunch of stuff like that. You can find basic reasons, which is why my whole stake in this is that what you believe is how your action is, but your action is not evidence for the truth factor of your belief. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the scientist does when he goes home. General relativity still stands, which actually I don't think it does if you believe in string theory, quantum physics, which is actually
it's just
conversation.
It is based upon his honesty and his integrity.
During when he's doing so like when you're like for epistemology wise, but there's being honest within epistemology. I could be a liar. You don't know if I'm a liar or not. I could be lying that my name's Nathan, whatever. But when it comes to epistemology, it's just that. It's just talking about those. Me being a liar doesn't mean am I lying within this? Am I making logical contradictions? Am I being dishonest? I would say. Because arguments and ideas are divorced from the people making it. It's just a basic rule in philosophy and argumentation.
Okay, we can go on forever, but I think we need to maybe wrap up on this last thing.
Okay.
Because he mentioned, because you brought up, you show me one good prophecy in the scriptures.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, that meets this. So the reason I said, so I just want to be clear, the reason I brought that up is because I don't think prophecy meets the same standard that novel testable predictions do. Like Einstein taking a picture of the curvature of space-time. is not like Isaiah or predicting that Jesus will come. He will be born in Bethlehem or whatever it is. So just so
Because you want
know.
it to be observable and repeatable.
It has to be observable, repeatable, and novel.
But we don't approach.
So it doesn't make. So my argument wasn't that there are.
But we don't approach the acquisition of all knowledge that way, though.
I'm not suggesting that you do.
Yeah. So this
I'm
is.
saying
this
that
is-
religion
this is
has
a,
nothing to give us in terms of.
But prophecy is talking about a historical event that is yet future to the time it was spoken. It's a unique occurrence.
Yeah, this is a. Let me just say, this is. We can definitely go down this road, but
Yeah.
there's a lot to that as well. Like, it's not just because it doesn't make a lot of novel, testable predictions, but like, the prediction of Jesus or just take Revelations. My uncle is, well, if he's gonna watch this, I won't say it, so never mind. But he's one of these people who think that every event that has ever came, that is happening now, is a complete unfolding of biblical prophecy. Now, I don't know what your position is. Every Christian has a different idea.
I know what you mean.
So there's a problem with that, right? It's not clear, it's vague, it's usually vague, and even in the Bible, even in the Gospels, it says, as it is said in Scripture, meaning that they already knew Scripture and then wrote the Bible, meaning that it's very simple to make the jump, or it's better to conclude that they wrote these things to have happened, already knowing that it was prophesied in the past. Mm-hmm. But anyway, like it keeps saying it as an accordance with Scripture, as Jesus came in and asked.
Except that the scriptures, we're making a distinction from the New Testament writers and the Old Testament prophecies.
Yeah.
The New Testament writers, not only were they recording these accounts, they were recording these accounts within the lifetime of other eyewitnesses who could have refuted them.
That's extremely debatable, yeah. But that's not a consensus.
No. But the thing is
read this guy.
So we believe the Bible. I believe the Bible because it is a.
You do.
Because it is a collection of historical documents written by the eyewitnesses in the witness of other eyewitnesses.
Well, it wasn't written by eyewitnesses. Like even Matthew began saying, or is it Mark who began saying that this is taken from other eyewitnesses?
Yeah. But it's within the lifetime of eyewitnesses who could have refuted it.
Yeah, but at least 40 years after.
In some instances, yes, but
in the earliest instance, 40 years after.
Referring to what?
Paul, talking about he was giving a biblical account of Jesus. It's 40 years after the death of Jesus. Now, I don't know, and everything before that was. This is why I didn't want to unpack this, but everything before that was what's the word? Audible, not audible, but word of mouth. Mm-hmm. Why am I missing words? You know what I'm talking about. What's the name?
Oral tradition.
Oral. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oral tradition. Yeah. So yeah, it's very, very, very difficult to say. Like a good way to think of that is like, what is the last speech you watched? What's the last speech you watched? Like let's say one of Trump's speeches. Let's say the one he gave. Did you see any of his speeches? Like whatever.
Yeah.
Can you write down what he said?
Okay.
That's the problem, and that was like 2 years ago. Not even.
Whoa! That's apples to oranges.
That's what?
That's apples to oranges. First of all, you're comparing our inability with someone else and extrapolating that everybody's also incapable. And second of all, because it was a normal practice back then, they had extreme precision in maintaining texts by oral tradition, as clearly displayed by the Jewish tradition.
So that is actually not true. So you're right. They were better at keeping oral traditions, and the idea is that because this is all they had to be better at keeping the information. But the truth is, they didn't care about accuracy back then. Accuracy was not important. In fact, what was important were the teachings, were the ideas and the stories. The accuracy of them were not important at all. So that's why you read in the book of when did Jesus die?
33 AD.
No. When was it on Passover or was it the day after Passover?
That would have been a Friday.
It depends on which Bible. See, my suggestion for y'all, if you want to see what I'm talking about, go to Mark, the earliest gospel. Read the first story of Mark. Read the Passion.
You're assuming we have it.
No. I'm saying this is a good,
Yeah.
like for everyone.
Mhm.
Then read the Passion story, and then go to Matthew, read the Passion story. Then go to Luke, read the
Yeah.
Passion story, and then John, read the Passion
Sure.
story. Totally contradictory.
No, they're not.
So when did Jesus die?
Okay, first of all, before I answer that, they're not contradictory. They are focusing on different points of the account.
So
And the thing is they're also writing from different perspectives. It's not necessarily a contradiction. Like if I am on the corner over by Bush's Chicken, and you're over here, and we see a two cars collide at that intersection, I'm going to see it from a different angle, and I'm going to describe it from that angle and that perspective. You over here are going to be describing it from your perspective.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily contradictory.
They are. If one says that it happened on 8th Street, the other one said it happened on 7th Street.
Okay, but that's not what we're seeing in the scriptures.
It is what we're seeing in the scriptures, because in the scripture it says that Jesus was killed on Passover, and then he was killed before Passover. And that's actually historically important.
Okay. Are we talking about the Lucan account?
I'm not sure which one it
Okay,
is.
because that's.
It's actually in
I
this
want to
book
say
I'm
that
reading
there's a distinction between the Luke's audience was primarily probably a Greek audience. We don't know much about Theophilus, but it's a Greek name. And their accounting of time is day starts at sunrise. The Jewish accounting of time is day starts at sunset.
Yeah.
And so depending on what angle you're
That's
speaking,
the one argument against that. Yeah.
depending on what angle you're speaking from, Jewish versus Greek, you're going to approach that differently.
But they're over 24 hours apart, so you can't reconcile it that way.
They're over.
So let's do a different one then. How about how did Judas die?
Huh?
How did Judas die?
He hung himself.
Did he? I thought he fell off the cliff head first.
Well, is the line not allowed to snap?
And then fall on his head?
Yeah.
So that's like the worst. So the problem is that's literally irreconcilable.
Okay.
And if you're looking at
Can
history,
you give me chapter and verse on that so I can look it up for you?
I don't. Just look up. You can just Google. There's 2 stories of Judas.
But
Just Google the 2 stories.
You do understand
How he
that faithful men, careful, believing men, have addressed all these things. Everything you're saying, I've heard these. I don't have them the proper responses, the biblically faithful responses, right off the top of my head. But I know that these things have been addressed.
So, it's an argument of fallacy authority.
No.
Argument of authority.
No.
But
It's
because it's
look.
You're saying
I'm not presenting it because I don't have the exact addressing of it. But I have looked into this. I know that it has been addressed, and so it's.
Well, then maybe we should talk about something else, because it seems I'm also not as well versed in this. It's actually part of my study now is I'm looking at the history of the Bible and where it came from and all its like there's a this guy. This is why I like what he's talking about. There's a book he wrote about just the contradictions of the Bible. In fact, in the 1800s, there was a guy who wrote. He took the Bible and it took 30 years. He compiled the book, and it took him 30 years to do. And pointed out all the meaningful contradictions of the Bible, and it was like 30,000 different contradictions in the Bible. Now, that's not even a problem for most Christians, because most Christians aren't literalists. They don't think that the Bible is written with the intent for accuracy, but rather for the intent to present the Holy Spirit and to present that Spirit into the mind of man, not to be like a scientific proof. Like when God said that the waters are made before light.
I didn't say it's a scientific text.
Exactly. But when you're a literalist, you have to assume that you have to reconcile 2 complete contradictory things. So like, did Judas fall off a cliff, or did he hang himself? There was the way a historian reads that is that we know that Judas probably something happened to his neck, and then he fell into there's a field that he fell into which they called the field of blood. That probably has something to do with it. But you I'm looking for where he fell. He dove head first. It's the dove head first is in. It's not in the Gospels. It's in.
I'm pretty sure he's referring to the Old Testament prophet that talks about the men who would betray the Messiah, and in the New Testament it's referred to, and it sounds like this guy that you're reading is actually referring to the Old Testament language.
No. This is very clear about Judas' death. There's 2 contradictory. I mean, it's very easy. I mean, when was Jesus born? Where was Jesus born? What happened? What did they find in the tomb when they opened the tomb? Did they find angels? Did they find nothing? Did they find? Was there a?
Interesting.
Who found them? Was it 3 women? Was Mary Magdalene there? Was his mother there?
Yeah.
Okay, again,
It depends on which gospel you read.
but because they're speaking of, they're making a different point. They're focusing on a different aspect. That doesn't necessarily invalidate any one of their testimonies.
I don't think it does either,
Yeah.
except when you make the claim that the Bible is inerrant. That's the argument against the inerrancy.
But it's not. I understand what you say. I don't agree with you. I think that if you read something like John MacArthur's book, where he brings up the coherence of the different Gospels and puts them next to each other in order, so that you can see how they can indeed logically coexist, I think you may be surprised.
No, but see, I totally get that there's a lot of work done trying to reconcile these. It's been done ever since 1611. So this is not a question about people finding ways to put these together and make them work. It doesn't matter if you do. It's just the fact that if you believe it's literally true, you have to do extra stuff to make it true. You have to do more reasoning.
You have to do extra work to understand.
Like you have to say that. So but there's just some things that are irreconcilable. Like when he died, that's irreconcilable.
I would love to. At a later time, I would love to do that personally with you and go through that.
Well, that's again, that's something that I'm really speaking out of very terrible knowledge of. Like I'm basically just recently, for the last 3 months, been studying it, so it's not something totally fresh. But I absolutely would love to do that with you. I would just suggest reading a book called by Bart Ehrman. Just read a historian, any historian. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. It's like from a historical perspective, the Bible doesn't. The claims of the Bible are very, very tricky. But that's not even important, because you would say the same thing about some other random book. Like, you would have no problem saying this about some other book. Yeah, that's incoherent. You look at whatever. You wouldn't take the time to try to make them coherent. You only do that because there's a special case with your book, with this special book, this one that you already presuppose. And that's the problem of presupposition. It taints everything else, because you're not going where the evidence is. You're starting with the conclusion. And you're trying to paint the world as if that's what it is, rather than, let's see what's actually going on. Start with don't know. And that's my position. And I think it's, personally, a healthier position to teach to children. It's a bad position to tell children that you should believe in things without evidence.
That's a moral claim. And we haven't even
It is a
gotten to
moral
that.
claim.
We haven't
It is a
even
moral
gotten to
claim.
that.
It's actually a motivation for me.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I speak out against religion.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
religion has a lot of great things. I'm not totally.
You-
I don't even know if I'm right.
You mentioned Islam as a competing claim, and you threw it in there. Why not Islam?
Yeah, why not Islam?
Yeah, and I can address that just very, very briefly.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just.
Why not Islam without evoking the Bible?
Well, let's grant it. Let's grant. Okay, let's look at this. Is the Quran? What does it teach? What does it say? It says that the Quran are the words of Allah. Mm-hmm. It says the Quran. It says the words of Allah cannot be corrupted.
Okay.
That's what the Quran teaches. Mm-hmm. The words of Allah cannot be corrupted. It also says that the Injil, which is the New Testament, the Gospels of the New Testament specifically, they are the words of Allah.
Yeah.
So in order for the Quran to be true, the Bible must be true.
Oh.
And if the Bible
Okay.
is true, then the Quran can't be, because the
Okay.
Quran denies that Jesus Christ died on the cross.
Then why not Zeus? That's probably easier.
Yeah.
That gets to the point faster.
But no, I'm saying.
Why not Zeus?
Okay. Do you understand why not Islam?
I do understand. I understand your point.
Yeah.
But my point about bringing up Islam isn't about. You're right, because they are all connected.
Yeah.
I'm not granting.
It depends on the New Testament, on the scriptures being valid.
I grant that that Muslims also believe that. Well, they don't believe Jesus in particular. They don't believe everything. But
Yeah, they don't believe Jesus was the Son
they
of
do
God.
believe. They may say that the Bible and the New Testament is also true.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. It's not the point of the argument. The point of the argument is find anything. Why not? I'll say, why isn't it not naturalistic atheism?
Why is it not?
The point is, why not naturalistic pantheism? There is no God. everything that exists has existed forever, and it has all the. I can just throw all the omni properties to natural. So I'll say that the reason anything exists is because some unnatural thing, and it's all knowing, all powerful.
Okay, well then we can go down there, but now we get into a discussion as to how nothing that we observe is actually eternal in creation, in the created order. Everything has a starting point.
Does that mean that all of existence or the universe itself isn't eternal?
What we observe in creation, it is not eternal.
Exactly. So does that mean, therefore, so I'm trying to complete your argument. So because there's no eternal thing that we have observed, therefore the universe itself is not eternal. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the universe itself, as we observe the motion of the heavens, it is coming from a central starting place. It has a starting point.
Our universe has a starting place, but that says nothing about existence
see,
itself.
now you're speculating now.
No. I'm trying to point out your argument. You just said the reason that we know the universe is not eternal is because things within the universe aren't eternal, right? That's just like saying time is a quantity is the same argument. Because everything has a cause, there must be a cause for the universe. Now, let me be clear about my use of universe. By universe, I mean everything, not our universe as they know in physics. Because in physics, it's very specific. There's multi-universes. It could be whatever's outside. The Big Bang isn't the beginning of existence. It's just the end of our knowledge of this particular universe. There's nothing to say about before. Anyway, so that's why the people claim that science believes that the universe came from nothing. It's just false. But
not my claim.
You what?
Not my claim either.
No, I know. I can't remember. It wasn't you who said that. It was somebody the other time. But I forgot where we've been doing this for so long. I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, yeah. So composition fallacy. So, yeah. So you're saying that because everything's not eternal, within, like this couple decay, whatever.
Time.
It goes away. Time moves. But what do you mean by time?
That.
There's many different kind of times. You talk about physics and time, and it's not the same thing as like our idea of duration. Like, it's 2 o'clock now, 4 o'clock later, time has passed. It's not the same thing as physical time. Like the time can space into the time can curve and stuff like that. So it's a composition fallacy to say to say that because we observe it a micro instance, does that mean you can infer it on a macro level? Meaning that because everything has a cause, does that mean there's a cause to everything? Right? That's just a composition fallacy, and we do that all the time. Like you wouldn't say that you are just an amalgamation of molecules. You're just a bunch of molecules. Everything is just molecules.
Oh, wouldn't you have to say that?
No, it's a fallacy. Nobody says that. Well, I mean, I think so. People do say that. I think people are mistaken. I think there are other atheists who are very, very mistaken about things. Yeah, just very, very mistaken. I mean, they almost take a religious view of things they just haven't thought out completely. Like, you're stupid for believing God exists. That's a ridiculous thing to say. You're stupid for believing or making a claim that God doesn't exist. It's an equal kind of claim. So, like these angry atheists, I think, are just we find in the political left a lot. That's an issue. So I'm not saying that.
So,
anyway,
all that to go back to the prophetic word of Scripture.
Yes.
Okay, the prophetic word of Scripture that when we look at in the Old Testament and when we look at when these things were uttered, and we look at the archaeological evidence that is in line with that, we can see that this was written centuries before the actual events took place in the New Testament. It's demonstrated that way.
Okay.
The
destruction of the temple's one.
Well, one of the best examples, as you're saying, is the book of Isaiah. The best manuscript that we had, the oldest extant manuscript that we had was I forgot how old it was, but then they made a discovery in Qumran with the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they found an even older. I think it's 400 or 700 years older or something. It's older. It's way older than our best example. And when we actually compare this the scroll that was buried for centuries upon centuries.
Is it the Hogmanati scrolls?
When we compare it to what we have today, it's like 99%. It's been
That's
preserved.
a great claim.
It's been preserved.
What is your great evidence for it?
What when the two scrolls, when you compare them, when you read what we have, what was on the books to that point, and when you read what that scroll says, that's what they said. It was preserved, and
take your word for
so
it.
so within that was preserved Isaiah 53,
Okay.
which says.
Okay.
Or did you want to have a particular point you wanted to start with?
Let's read it first.
Huh?
If you want to read it first, then we can get
Yeah.
into it.
Okay. Who has believed what we have heard, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a young plant, like a root out of the dry ground. I know that sounds kind of ambiguous,
That's fine.
but we're going to get more specific in a second. He didn't have an impressive form or majesty that we should look on him, no appearance that we should desire him.
Mm-hmm.
He was despised and rejected by men, a man of suffering who knew what sickness was. He was like someone people turned away from. He was despised, and we didn't value him.
Yeah.
Yet he bore himself. Yet he himself bore our sicknesses, and he carried our pains. We in turn regarded him stricken, struck down by God, and afflicted. But he was pierced because of our rebellion, crushed because of our iniquities, punished for our peace. The punishment for our peace was on him, and we are healed by his wounds. We all went astray like sheep. We all have turned to our own way, and the Lord has punished him for the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb to the slaughter, and like a sheep silent before the hears. He did not open his mouth. He was taken away because of oppression and judgment. And who considered his fate? He was cut off from the land of the living. He was struck down because of my people's rebellion. He was assigned a grave with the wicked, but he was with a rich man at his death, because he had done no violence and had not spoken deceitfully. Yet the Lord was pleased to crush him severely. When you make him a guilt offering, he will see his seed, and he will prolong his days. And by his hand the Lord's pleasure will be accomplished.
Okay.
And
And you're saying this is a reference to Jesus?
direct, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so here's the problem. There's a few problems with that. First off, it's all in the past tense. It's talking about as if this is already past. So how is it a future prediction?
I would like to, if you'll let me.
Go ahead.
So this was understood at that time as a prophecy, even though he's writing about it in the past tense. It's common for prophets to speak as if things have already happened.
Okay.
Because when God speaks, it's already declared and it will come to pass.
Okay.
It's a I guess you could call it a literary device, perhaps, but
Just a literal thing? That's fine.
that's how they write.
Okay. So just a writing style.
But
It's a writing style talking about as if something. So you're saying that because the way it was written, how they usually granted prophecies, which isn't always true, because Jesus made prophecies which are not said in the past tense. But maybe you say maybe in the Old Testament they did it like that.
Yeah, I'm not saying always either. I'm saying in this case, this is how Isaiah's prophecies were written and conveyed.
So, okay. So I'll get to my point for a second. So that's great. So that's fine. I'll grant that too. So how do we know they're talking about Jesus?
What did you hear? Did you hear the different points that he fulfilled?
I heard all of that, everything that he fulfilled. How is this different than, how do we know it's Jesus and not the Messiah that the Jews are still waiting for?
I think I hear you correctly, but I want to make sure I understand what you're asking. So you want him to be explicitly named in this in order to really believe that he fulfilled these things.
I'm trying to find your reasoning for thinking it's a prophecy.
Got it.
So I'm trying to get down to just the basic questions I feel anybody should have when they are told they have divine prophecy. And if this is an all-knowing God, why wouldn't he use things very explicitly? So why do you think... No, actually, that's a different point. But again, you particularly, why do you think that's Jesus?
Sure. I'll speak to what you mentioned, and we can revisit it later, and then I'll answer your first question.
Okay.
He does, in some cases, choose to be explicit, and he does that for his own reasons. Like, I think it was King Cyrus that he named explicitly. I think it was with Daniel.
He names King Herod.
Oh, that too.
He names. I mean, there are a lot of
So-
the Bible's a great history book.
So sometimes, even in prophecies, God does name certain people for certain reasons. And in this case, he doesn't. He doesn't give the name of
You know
Jesus in
why?
that passage. But in other times, well, of course, I don't know what God's reasons are. But,
Okay.
but to that point, there are other times when he does give us names, like that Jesus would be called Emmanuel, God with us. That he would be called different things.
So
But I think that's beside the point for what we're trying to demonstrate here. What we're trying to demonstrate here is that there were some things that were in his control, like
Writing it on a document.
that too.
Yeah, he
I was
did
thinking
say-
of something different.
But as you notice, when he does do those things, it says, as it was said in the
Yeah,
scriptures.
I was thinking of how he didn't open his mouth before his accusers, right? So you could argue fairly
Depends which
that
book are you talking about.
What
On
we
the
just read.
cross? Oh,
what we just read said that he would not open his mouth. He would be like a sheep before its shears.
but he
And-
did, depending on which gospel you read. My
Well,
God,
it's not
why
that
have
he
you
totally
forsaken
did.
me?
It's that he didn't give it a defense in the night when he had the wrong examination by the Pharisees.
This is my problem with prophecy. It requires a lot of interpreting. Because you're like, oh, well, he's not talking about when he was on the cross. We're talking about the night when he was accused. Okay, how do you know that? Well, it doesn't say it there. It's just, well, that just makes no sense.
Well, I
Right,
think
so-
doesn't Paul point out that that's the exact distance that's in mind? Somewhere, I'll have to check me on this. I
Even
admit,
though,
Is that in Luke?
let's say Paul
Clarity.
does say it.
yeah.
Even though he says it, that doesn't lead credence to it being true. So that's the
How
we're
so?
talking about, because we're talking about a prediction. So like a prediction to me is like, but this is my okay. You know, actually, I won't even do the scientific prediction. Let's just go with this. Why you still think it's Jesus? It doesn't say Jesus. You have to move things around to say, oh, well, he didn't open his mouth at this time, so that's what it was actually saying. Because Jesus did open his mouth, and he did actually talk during that time too. He calmed, and whatever his name was got his ear cut off, and he told him not to, whatever. He opened his mouth. He did open his mouth. It doesn't make sense.
It does make sense if you take Paul's accounting for how they work together. Because there's a specific instance when he's brought before the Pharisees with an unjust trial in the middle of the night, and he refuses to give an account of himself to them as they bring accusations to him.
That's
Moreover,
right.
that's just within the realm of what was potentially in his control. Because you could rightly argue, yep, Jesus knew the prophecy already, so he was just choosing to fulfill it through the
That's
life's
not my
life.
argument.
But even if, okay, then great. But even so,
Yeah.
he didn't have control in the time of history that he was born. So the fact that he was crucified, the fact that he was pierced for transgressions, is another kind of prophecy, part of the prophecy that he fulfilled.
So, that's fine. I just think that we have a different standard of prediction.
Well, we're talking about two different kinds. I would agree with your standard if we're talking about scientific predictions.
It's the same
But
standard.
this is not a scientific prediction that we're talking about.
Well, here's a better prediction that comes from a religious text. The Puranas predicted accurately that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. They predicted that way before Jesus was around, and it was true. Does that make the Puranas true?
I would refute both of those claims. But okay.
Why?
Because it isn't. I would argue that it's not proven that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old.
Oh, so you're a young Earth creationist.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to have that conversation?
I do, but not in this sitting.
Yeah, because that's another.
And it would take a long time.
That's the hard. That's why I like this conversation, because it hits on every point of philosophy. It
Yeah.
hits on every point of.
I am
knowledge.
willing, just not at this.
Yeah, no, I know that's literally another monster. I don't even want to begin, but that's fine. So you are young Earth creationist at
Yeah.
the same time. So then science to you is not really as accurate as the Bible is.
Oh no, I wouldn't say that. I would say science is a reliable source to determine probable theories. Very, very reliable source to determine probable theories. But it is a bad source. It is not a source of ultimate truth. It's not a way to
It doesn't
determine.
claim to be.
Agreed. I'm just clarifying my stance. No, but I want to finish what we.
Sorry.
We're
Yeah,
talking
we're
about.
going on the prophecy part.
So-
yeah, we just have. Oh yeah, and so I'm concluding. I mean, it's fine. In terms of not going any further, because I hear what you're talking about. My uncle is a huge prophetic guy. I mean, he's constantly doing this, and it's always comes down to vagary and not clear. And my standard for if you're going to make a prediction, particularly if you're God, you want to convince people, say, hey, guess what? There's going to be a guy. His name's Jesus. He's going to be my son. This is what's going to happen to him.
Yet all of those things you just listed are true and revealed in the Bible at different points through different prophets. They tell us his name. They tell us where he was going to be born. They tell us how he's going to die.
They don't tell us his name. So this particular prophecy doesn't.
I said that. They're different prophecies that include all of those different
There's like-
pieces.
So you could
300
God could have made the Bible better by just being explicit.
See, there's the rebellion that you're referring to earlier. I know better than
might
God.
be-
God could have done it better.
No. I'm saying that information. So like, I'm not claiming. First off, I don't say that because I'm not presupposing God like you are. You're admitting that's only rebellion to you when you presuppose God. I'm not. So the point that meaning better, meaning clearer, if God was just plainly explicit about things, which this is the classic argument, of course, which I'm sure you probably already have an answer to. But he could have just said, hey, look, there's going to be Jesus, he's going to come around, he's going to be born here. That's exactly what's going to happen. But he doesn't. He says things in vagary, he has to speak in the past tense, yet that's because some things happen that way. And when he was silent, he was only silent when he was accused, not on the cross. We got to talk about that. Or you can even say when he was in front of Pontius Pilate, he was silent, he only said 2 words, whatever.
Very quickly. So are you saying that if you had that kind of evidence that you would surrender to Christ and become a
Absolutely.
Christian?
If that evidence was true, absolutely. If it had that kind of particular evidence, then there's evidence for it. I wouldn't know. Oh, let me restate it. If there was, let's say that the whole Bible was evidently proven to be accurate, then yes. But one prophecy won't do it. Like, let's say even, so like the Puranas, for example, they accurately proved, from my position, the scientific position, that they're at least 4.5 billion years old. Right? And that's amazingly accurate. Doesn't make me believe in the Puranas. I don't believe that. And so just one prophecy isn't convincing, and it shouldn't be convincing. I think that...
That's why there's 300.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so now you're dismissing.
No,
Okay.
no. If the same methodology of interpretation is invoked the way you just put out this particular prophecy, then I can, on that, and this is a hasty generalization, I am bound to dismiss it if that's your methodology. Unless it's
Say that
specific. So basically I'm saying if it's not specific, it's not to me a prophecy, because you can, it's, another way of saying this is that you can look back at ever since that these books were written, and not just with the Bible, but with other books, people thought like to say the end of the world. Apocalypticism, which is actually, interestingly, they think that Jesus had, the reason he spoke that way is because he actually was influenced by apocalypticists back in the day, Jewish apocalypticists, which is really interesting. But, I forgot what was my name. It's too long of a conversation. What was I just saying?
We are coming to the end of it.
What was I just saying? I said before I said the apocalypticist thing, because of that methodology. Yeah. So
Wait.
because it's not accurate. So
A hasty generalization.
yeah, I'm not trying to make. I am making a hasty generalization, but I'm only dismissing, or I'm basically rejecting the methodology of determining what a prediction is. So for me, a prediction is something Einsteinian with the curvature of space-time.
Okay, but now you're applying a different standard to
No, I
not
think,
prophecy.
and that's my argument, is that it should be the same standard, particularly when we look at other books that are more accurate than that.
Other books that are more accurate than that, such
Well, no,
as...
there are
Like
just
the
other
Quran.
books that have those kinds of examples. I mean,
That's
So
what
if
we
you're
say-
proving a court case,
the-
and you
the-
have
which book?
eyewitness testimony, for example,
Yeah.
or you're trying to prove a historical event, you don't apply the scientific method
Yes,
in
you
that
do.
scenario. You use it to leverage different points of consideration, but it's not the only standard.
The court case is the best example. You're right. That is exactly how we come to truth, because that is where the truth really matters. How do they come to truth? They don't do it like this. They don't read and try to fit it in the right area. They
No,
don't
I'm
have
trying
their
to fit
hang on. They don't have their
That's
conclusion
misrepresenting the
first.
position,
How?
because we're not fitting it in. We're seeing the fulfillment of it. It's not a. I'm going to decide that this thing is what it is what that says. No, it's been studied and carefully demonstrated that this is what it is, and it's
That's called, sir. The reason I'm saying you're fitting it is because it's not explicit. So
Well, it's not explicit enough for you.
it's not for me. It's just the standard of evidence we should have for determining what the truth is. So, like in a court case, let's say the butler did it. The butler did it. Well, how do you know? This book says so. Is that good evidence?
Okay, that's
That's a straw man.
Even I know it's a straw man.
No,
It's
but
a straw man to point out
this
the
book
inaccuracy.
says so, and I'm not going to do anything with it. You're not even going to examine if the book is what the book is saying at that point.
But the reason eyewitness testimony is the least reliable standard of evidence in a court case is for that reason alone.
Because I can dismiss this all day long, but open it.
I've read that Bible extensively. I'm just saying that my point is I can't even keep points together anymore because I'm so tired.
Sorry,
But,
sorry, I don't want to
no,
distract.
but like the standard of that's what I'm objecting to. You're changing your standard for evidence based on what you're looking at. When it comes to your special case, that's what we call special pleading. Oh well, yes, the standard evidence for in a court case or in science is you should have it like that, but you shouldn't do it when you come to the Bible. Why?
No, it's not that.
It's not exactly accurate,
That's
but I
not
get
what we're
your
saying.
point.
It's not that you shouldn't do it when you come to the Bible. It's that we approach historical accounts differently than we approach the molecular weight of H2O.
No, so absolutely.
Yes.
The standard of evidence is the same. So history
Yeah.
actually has the standard of evidence. And that's why
Yeah.
in history they don't
Yeah.
think prophecy is true.
Yeah. No, but
It's too inaccurate. In the same way that history cannot reconcile, like y'all tried to do, with the differences between the contradictions within just the Gospels. So, the standard of evidence is different. So, but scholars, scholars. Go on.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. I don't want
So I'm
to cut
saying
you
that
off.
the standard cannot change, and that's what they call in philosophy shifting the goalpost.
Okay, but the thing is what you asserted as contradiction. People have heard and fielded those claims and addressed them. And there are ways and they have been found to actually be quite harmonious.
When you change your standard of evidence,
No.
yes, you can't tell me this, sir. You can't say that it has the same standard of evidence that we do when we have a court case. Let's say somebody, that's actually I love that example. It's the best example. It's like let's put Jesus on trial. Isn't there a book called Jesus on Trial? Jesus on Trial. What would we do? How would we find out if this is actually true? What is the evidence? We'd have to change it to make it true. If you want to say that that's a prophecy, it's
We'd have
not
to
a
change
good
what?
prediction. We have to change our standard of evidence, what we consider evidence. Now, evidence is anything that makes something more true than not, right? That's anything. It doesn't even matter if it's science, it doesn't matter if it's logic, it doesn't matter if it's reason, as long as it gives me something more.
Does evidence have to be
Your
interpreted?
opinion, no, so your interpretation...
Well, it doesn't?
No, it doesn't actually, because your interpretation and your opinion is not evidence, right? And that's why in philosophy, you take philosophy 101, well, maybe not that, just logic, I think. They say that an argument is divorced from the arguer. You don't look at the arguer, you look at the argumentation. So, just having your opinion isn't sufficient evidence.
Because otherwise you'd be stuck in the genetic fallacy. Oh, he said it, therefore it's not true.
Well, the genetic fallacy is, because he said it, therefore it's not true. No,
Yeah.
Genetic fallacy is about because it's happened in history.
Yeah.
That it is therefore true.
Well, it's
No, that's not right.
well if okay,
No, what is
it's okay. Bill's a liar. All right. Bill told me 2 + 2 is 4, but Bill's a liar, so I can reject it.
Yeah, that's not the genetic fallacy. That's an ad hominem. That's an ad hominem.
No.
Because you're attacking the person.
No.
It's wrong to reason that way. You're attacking the reasoner,
No.
not the reason.
No, but it's. But you're not.
He's talking about a different fallacy.
Yeah. I'm talking
Well,
about
what you just said is
your-
because somebody is a certain. So, a good example I use is Sigmund Freud. He's a coke addict. So therefore, everything he learned was bad, or everything that he presented
Yeah,
is bad.
there we go.
So
Yeah,
that's an
that-
ad hominem. That's what you're attacking the. And this is what politics today, unfortunately, is all about.
Yeah.
It's attacking the person and not the policy. It's attacking the person, not the argument.
Yeah,
And
okay.
that's not a good. You're good. You're right. You shouldn't reason that way.
Yeah.
But this is a little bit different than. I feel so bad for not knowing what the genetic fallacy is off the top of my head.
Yeah.
It's important. I do know it. I just don't
Yeah.
have it.
They've been going for a while.
Yeah, this
Cut
is.
some slack.
Cut me slack.
Cut us all slack.
I love it though. I could do.
Yeah.
It.
If I don't necessarily like to reason this way, but I can recommend a source, a book, if you would want to study. You'll approach it with a healthy skepticism, I'm sure. But you can, I forget the name of the author, but the title just came to me. It's Cold Case Christianity.
I've read it.
Yeah. So
It's actually an argument about the reason I've read it. He has two of them. Cold Case Christianity, and then was a sequel.
But
Cold Case God or something.
but what he was doing is compiling, all of the different ways that Christianity is attacked in these different ways, and people have addressed these things, and so there's no.
From my understanding of the book, maybe I may be mistaking it with a different book, which is entirely possible at this point.
Yeah.
I thought he was making the claim that Jesus existed. That he was trying to say that, okay, look, this guy really did exist, and we can probably, and his claim is that we can trust what has been said about him.
Yeah, because
most of that book I didn't disagree with, because I think Jesus existed, and I think that the Bible is just as accurate as a historical document that we have of anything during that time as well. But it's not a case for an author. We need a historian, not a ex-private investigator. Or what was he? He was a
forensic detective.
Forensic detective. Yeah. So that is not an authority on those issues at all. You need historians. So, I don't know how much more I can do.
Yeah.
I really can keep going, though.
It would be good in my mind to make sure there's nothing else that needs to be said or that anybody wants to say, and then potentially pick out a couple points to revisit at a later date. That's what I would like to do.
Yeah, I think we covered epistemology pretty well, and I think that if we have this conversation again, I'll just repeat the epistemology of I think therefore I am, and I don't know anything. But what we can know are varying levels of probability.
Everything after that, it's all conjecture.
It is, and so
this whole thing is conjecture.
Well, but with varying levels of probability, the same way that a pink elephant outside and a car outside is both conjecture. One of those is more probable, and so there is a clear difference between the two, and we can make statements that are reasonable like that. And so that's another appeal to the consensus is also part of that. So I think that if you want to discuss my epistemology further, that would be great. But I think that's kind of like beating a dead horse, because we already admit that you start with the conclusion, I don't start with the conclusion, and then we try to, you have the presupposition, I don't. Which I was surprised. I thought we were going to talk about you need a presupposition for the laws of logic and thinking it all, and that kind of. I thought that was going to be the argument. Yeah. We could talk about presupposition, like go deeper into presup if you want. Then the other one I thought would be very interesting would be to talk about a little bit more the science side, evolution, creationism, that kind of thing. But what do y'all think? What do you think we should talk about next time?
Again, my foundation is always going to be God's word has the power that He intends for it to have. It will not return void, and I'm always going to call back and try and leave that with you. That in His word He calls you to repent and believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, and knowing that call, that command, you won't even approach wanting to believe in it unless God grants it to you, and I pray that He would. So.
You don't pray that He would?
No, I pray that He would. And in fact, in the best way possible, I'm going to pray for you that you will not rest easy until you find your rest in Christ.
Well, that's another good conversation actually we could have, is about how I think the talk about how to have a good life. That to me is really my final motivation about all of this. It's really about how to live a day-to-day experience, and what does it take, and like what kind of world do we want to see in the future, and how should we be teaching our children. I think that these are the reason I actually have these conversations are for those purposes, because when you say having peace, I would love to talk about peace.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. So for my 2 cents,
sure.
I think truly that's where the rubber will meet the road. And to be transparent with you, I would make the argument that you won't have consistency between not whether or not you can live a good life. I don't doubt that you can be moral and experience a good life. What I'm going to doubt and what I would bring forward next time is why. and whether or not you have a solid enough foundation to have a good life and a moral life.
Okay. Yeah, we can talk about that for sure.
And I think one avenue to get to that is the doctrines of grace. I think since that's new territory for you, that would be
certainly
fruitful
is. Yeah.
for your own mind, but also it gets right to the heart of a God-centered presentation of all of these aspects that we've been getting at. So if you want to do pre-reading or research on that, it's called the Doctrines of Grace.
Okay. Is that that's not part of the Bible, obviously? So is this like just further interpretation or theology?
Yeah, so it's part of Reformed theology.
Okay.
A really good resource is John MacArthur.
Okay. Doctrine.
You might find stuff from Steve Lawson. They usually cover some similar ground.
What was say do you mind saying the first name?
John MacArthur.
John, not McCarthy.
No, MacArthur.
MacArthur. M little C, big C.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got it.
Carth. E-R. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so that would be...
These are books, or these are? It's
So,
just kind of been.
There's an
developed?
acronym that goes with it. It's called TULIP. There are 5 points of the Doctrines of Grace.
Okay.
The terms I'm about to give you can be unhelpful at first because they need definition,
Okay.
and that will be flushed out by him and other people. Total depravity, irresistible grace, limited atonement, irresistible grace, and perseverance of the saints.
Okay.
So in short, people are depraved by nature. We're not as bad as we could be, but we are fundamentally depraved.
Yeah.
What was it you? Unconditional.
Unconditional election. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah.
God's the one that makes the choice. Limited atonement.
Yeah.
Meaning that there is a certain number of people that God saves, not everybody.
So you do believe? Oh, yeah. That you did say
Yeah.
that. That's right.
Irresistible grace. God is the one that draws us into that loving relationship with Himself, and those who are the recipients of this grace will persevere through the end of their lives.
And this is Calvinism.
Yeah. So these are 5 tenets of Calvinism
Very
and therefore Reformed theology.
Very interesting.
And so, if we get into this, I think not only will it be interesting to you intellectually,
Yeah.
but it'll get right to the heart of the morality of things, like the why that I was alluding to earlier. That I think is really good.
Yeah. So I'll premise that in the thing of why, because like I said before, theology. You know, my thing about theology, it's a little bit like you can do this with any book. I mean, you could do biblical. When I strawmanningly say biblical fan fiction, but it's just further reflection about about it, and it's not to me. It has to. If the question is there a good reason to believe in God, and we're going to talk about morality, the why question, and that kind of thing. I'm curious that. To me, theology wouldn't cut it, no matter how much theology you do. Not trying to be totally dismissive, but simply because of what theology is, right? So, like, it's like if I took Harry Potter, we want to see if Harry Potter's true. We start talking about the story of Harry Potter and how it correlates to some things in the real world, right? Like, Harry Potter does make mention of certain areas of London and stuff. Doesn't make Harry
Like
Potter
when I run
true.
into that pole, it's supposed to take you through the portal.
Yeah, well then
Yeah.
that's when the rubber meets the road, right?
Yeah.
Then
The face
then
meets
you
the
get-
pavement.
Yeah, the face
Yeah,
meets the pavement. That's right.
Would there be any point in the Harry Potter series where we can ask the question? Does it say why it was written?
No, probably not. No,
Well, because
but I bet we could probably.
because the scriptures do indicate in places that let us know why these
Yeah.
things are written.
Yeah. Okay. So, but I thought the why question was more about not about why the book was written, but about morality.
Yeah, I meant
so
it.
we meant morality.
Well,
So-
that's a bigger why.
Well, why the
question.
book was written is, I think, is pretty. Well, I guess maybe for me it's obvious, but I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we'd actually agree why the book was written, other than you
But
actually believing it. And I
But
don't.
these things are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in His name.
Exactly.
That's what I would impart to you.
Is that John 20?
It's John 20 and 31, last verse in the chapter. Under James White's name, which is the second bullet point, under his name, just put debates. Just under his name,
All his debates?
because
Okay.
he's got like 140 debates with all manner of worldview. He debates with Muslims. He debates with atheists. He debates with Catholics.
Y'all should check out T Jump. If you understand, if you ever want to read Tom Jump, please do that, because or Tom Jump is on YouTube, and if you just look at a couple of his, he's an atheist and he does debates and.
Hey, what's up? I don't know what y'all got going on, so I didn't want to interrupt.
You remember this guy?
I think I met you.
I don't know if we've met.
Okay,
my name's
this is Nathan. We met him on the square.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right on.
he is a
Atheist.
atheist. Okay, I don't want to
Okay.
speak for you. Yeah.
No, please. Yeah, I'm a self-prescribed atheist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
This is
Please
Will.
God.
He's not
Will?
an atheist.
You're not.
He's not. Yeah.
So you Calvinist?
I'm a
Yes, he is.
Yeah, I'm a
All right,
Calvinist
very good,
too.
very good.
Yeah.
Very interesting. That's
Yeah.
That's a new thing for me, Calvinism.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever. Well, if somebody was a Calvinist, they've never told me. Like I know. I know. Like, didn't Calvinists have the churches that are square and they all face the middle? What is that?
Is that an Anglican?
No. And then they sit in silence. And that was so interesting.
This is news to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
It might be
what you're
early
talking
Calvinism.
about. I have
Maybe.
no idea.
Not Calvinism. There's so much.
At the
There's so
very
much
least,
to
it would be
remember.
helpful to
Yeah.
clear up some of those things with you, so you know
Yeah.
where Calvinists
Sure,
stand on
sure,
certain
sure.
things.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to do that.
Yeah, I mean, but to me, it doesn't matter what religion it is.
All that
If y'all are
Charles
Christians, y'all are
conversation, I'm
Muslim,
actually
y'all are
meeting Jeff
even if you want to tell me about something supernatural, it's always down to the same thing, and it always comes down to a court case.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to say it. It's the same standards in a court case, and I think we should have consistent standards from all form of knowledge.
Yeah, well, I guess this could be a good opportunity to clarify, using the illustration, my position and the difference between our positions. I don't think that God is on trial. I think that we're on trial, and God's the judge. And He's the only one that has the right to sit in that position. So I'm not arguing that we should treat everything else the same way that we treat God. We shouldn't presuppose everything else and operate that way. But I am saying
I know.
God is the one that's judging, and we're on trial, not the other way around. So
Well,
maybe that's helpful.
I see. And again, it goes back to the fundamental difference because I see what you're saying. But my claim is that, obviously we don't presuppose everything else, right? Like that. But I'm saying, but you do for this one thing.
Absolutely.
And so that one
Absolutely.
thing is where the standard of evidence and the standard changes. And my position is that we should keep the same standard. We shouldn't have special pleading, because then there's literally no way to differentiate what's true between somebody who is Buddhist or somebody or some other random religion. I'm not going to make a specific religious claim, but somebody else's random religion who makes the same kind of claims. How do we know they're not right? That's why the standard of evidence needs to be consistent, because you could be wrong. You could have endorsed yourself in a completely incorrect religion. It could, and I don't know if you actually even grant that possibility. Most Christians don't. Like my uncle would say, "No, I know I'm right." And like as Jesus says, "You got brothers you should know and not believe."
Well, I would just have to join with the Apostle Peter and declare that Jesus has the words of life. Where else are we going to go?
Where are you trying to get to? Why are you trying to run?
Because
here
there's life.
Because life is full of sin,
It's in His name.
pain,
Yeah.
and we all know it. The world's broken.
Does running away work?
No, we're advocating that the only option that's worth pursuing is a reconciled relationship with God. That is the only thing that makes
Which would, I think, now this touches more into the well-beingness part, because I think that kind of philosophy about how to deal with the inevitability of suffering in this world is extremely important, and it matters what we tell people. People, like, you all want to say, believe in this book. And I'm being a straw man, purposely, though. I'm not trying to be, but I know it's far more complicated than that. I'm way more sincere than that. But, and I'm saying, well, I think there's other ways of doing it that are better. I think, Anyway.
It'll be good to line those up next time.
Yeah, we'll do. I think that's great. So what are we going to do next time?
I would like to get into the doctrines of grace as a mechanism to get into the good life. And
Okay.
then as we're in the good life, we can contrast those different points between metaphysics to both sides, epistemology to both sides, ethics to both sides, so that's at least clear in the contrast.
I think that's a good. That's a good way to say it. Maybe we can focus. Maybe if I could say it a different way. Maybe how about we focus on like the conversation can be about what is a good life, and then you bring up the doctrine of grace as an antidote to suffering, and I'll bring up other methods as antidotes to suffering, right? Like, what is a good life? You propose, well, the doctrine of grace is a great way of thinking about that. I would say, no, maybe meditation is a great way of thinking about that, or other ways of thinking. So we can definitely do that.
Quick side question. I'm just curious. What is the significance of your bracelet?
Memento mori.
Huh?
Memento mori.
Okay.
Be mindful of death. Because when you're mindful of death, it doesn't sneak up on you. And it brings importance to this present moment. Because you can die right when you get up off this chair. Get a brain aneurysm, whatever. But
You're right.
being totally happy and at ease in this present moment because of the prospect of death. Meaning that there will be a last time you talk to another human being. There'll be a last time you pick up your daughter or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a limit to it. So keeping death in mind is a way to always enjoy this sacredness of the present moment, of what there is.
Count our days, number them.
Yeah.
I would just add that there's more waiting on the other side.
That's actually, I would argue, would be an immoral doctrine because of that. I think it steals from this moment, saying that my happiness and my salvation and my well-being will happen at a later time.
Oh, you think we think that?
Well, if you think that the goal, if there's a goal, like that's why I said earlier, where are you trying to go? You know, well, we got to figure out suffering, right? We try to go somewhere. Where are you going to figure out suffering? Trying to get to heaven, like heaven was later. The good stuff. Like it may be okay now, because here you're suffering,
I
but
see.
all the suffering ends once you get to heaven.
Yeah, I would definitely reserve what you might call the experience of heaven for beyond this life. But that by no means
That'd be a good conversation
indicates
too.
Yeah.
that we can't have foretaste of it here and now. I experience, we'll get into this next time, but I experience this certainly a kind of joy that is alien to me. It's something that is out of this world. It's something that surpasses understanding. The peace that surpasses understanding, for example.
Yeah.
But it informs every moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think that there, foundationally, in this present moment, there is just a unmistakably peace
Yeah.
and stillness.
Now,
Yeah.
have
As
you
Jesus,
considered?
be still, know that I'm God.
Say that again.
Be still and know that I'm God.
So
So this is just already present, like salvation or well-being is already present.
have you considered the option that life in every moment could be even more meaningful than you currently experience it, with the consideration of it renders a return on investment for eternity?
No, because I think that steals the joy from this moment.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
love to
because
do that
because
next time.
the reason my thinking about that is that because I'm trying to, if you believe in God, tell God what to do. I want something to be different than the way it is. And if that, so you're saying, if I understand you correctly, you said that don't you think that we can make this moment better by doing things now that would get some sort of large return later?
Understanding that no matter what we do, it has eternal implications.
Exactly. No, I don't think. And you're saying that this relates to making this present moment better.
Yeah, because then not only do I get to experience the happiness of helping somebody, let's say in a given moment, just because it's the right thing to do, not because it's self-serving, but knowing that there is an eternal weight of glory, something that brings glory to God.
Yeah.
But
This
then
goes
the people-
beyond me.
Yeah.
It
This is
helps
only
that
a-
person,
yeah.
and it's to the glory of God forever.
Yeah. This
Yeah,
is
but,
only a foretaste.
But again, that's again exactly what I'm saying. So it's placing this wonderfulness, this great whatever it is, like make it the big number one, God, heaven, whatever, eternity, whatever, later. It's
Yeah,
not now, and that's the point. I'm saying it steals
I see.
because I think that
But that's not the
I
Christian
think that-
position.
Well, I don't know if that. Oh, well, I'm just responding to his position.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
So yeah, but that to me comes from again this is a kind of a different conversation because it's more about like personal experience and really about. But to me, my only argument about the reason I would bring these up would be a counter argument to the idea that the only way to really have this kind of a wonderful, wonderful life or a really sacred and meaningful life. And I think that the experience of God, like walking with God daily, is a real experience. And I can say that from personal experience, that the feeling of encountering God, being one with the universe, whatever, is a real thing that happens to people across all religions and all cultures. They all try to explain it in their own way. And I think that we don't need belief in anything in order to achieve it or to have it. And we don't, actually, there's nothing we can do to cultivate it.
So that's
That's a different conversation.
a faith statement.
It is a faith statement, because I think what you guys call faith isn't faith. I think what you guys call faith is clinging.
Is what?
Clinging.
Clinging.
Clinging. Like, a good example from Alan Watts, I'll bring him up. He says, we're kind of all in the same position. You know, we're all at the beginning of life. Let's just say we're pushed off the precipice. We're all falling, you know. And We're following the feeling of following the suffering is kind of that relation. And in order to, we think clinging to rocks, holding on to rocks, and these rocks are ideas, beliefs, viewpoints, is going to save us. We're all falling in the same place anyway.
And the rocks are falling too.
Yeah, the rocks are falling too. Exactly. So instead of wasting energy clinging to rocks, you let go. And that's real faith, because you don't know what's going to happen. It's being totally okay with whatever it is, no matter what it is, not starting with a conclusion. That's real faith. Starting
so-
with a conclusion, I would say, would be
By
holding on.
contrast, I would say we know that there's a bottom coming, and so it's better to let go of the rocks and grab a hold of a parachute.
Yeah, I would make the distinction. I would make a
Jesus is the
distinction.
parachute, man.
Yeah, I know.
I would make the
Where'd you
distinction
get the
there.
parachute,
That
though?
It's
huh?
not. I think
Given by God.
I think the clinging is a, that's a.
It's my position.
Yeah, I think a better way of saying that is blind faith versus informed faith.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I know. Like, not, I mean, I know.
I'm like, I don't know what's
It's
out
the
there.
attitude of thy will be done. But thy will be done, thy is in question.
Yeah.
Right? Because I would say that the thy is what there is, regardless of what I believe it is. It doesn't matter what I believe. There is something, and in whatever it is,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what I believe. That I have trust in.
But-
And it's just an attitude of letting go.
Yeah.
Letting go.
I can discern that.
And I think I'm glad that this is a little bit of a poppy topic, because I think it'd be good to actually formally sit down and have this conversation. Because then we get into the broader implications of Christianity and just religion. Well, we'll stick to Christianity, and about well-being. Because trust me, that's the more important piece to me. What we did today was more of the logic.
Well, it's pretty broad in the end, but I do
That's good,
appreciate your
though.
time. Can I?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
absolutely appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate
Joe,
you. Yeah.
Jacob,
Yeah.
it was a pleasure meeting you.
yeah.
By the way. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I always get so much out of this. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me stop the
Good.
tape real quick.
I'm surprised you didn't pray. Oh, sorry.